right, so I'm so excited to be back in New England. I'm from Boston myself, beautiful Belmont, Massachusetts. I always say beautiful Belmont. I now live in Toronto, so I'm basically a Boston driver with Ontario plates. And when I bring our Ontario cars back, people think, oh, it's going to be this sweet little Canadian person, you know. I can cut her off like, oh, no, you don't. New Hampshire was my family's vacation place, so we went all over New Hampshire in the winter and the summer. I love New Hampshire. It's tied with California as my favorite state for natural beauty. We climbed many mountains here, and I could tell you a lot of funny and fun New Hampshire stories, but we don't have time for that. We even came back after I entered the convent. We would still go on vacation in New Hampshire. It was our go-to place. I did some time at Magdalen College. Did some time. Did anybody know Dr. John Meehan?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I got a solid foundation in philosophy there when it was the Fleabag Motel. Anybody remember the Fleabag Motel in Warner, New Hampshire? Yeah, that was awesome. Okay, I'll tell you one funny New Hampshire story. So back in the day, our sisters wore black, right, Sister Claire? And we had black stockings, like opaque black stockings, and we never went swimming, and we never took our stockings off. Like if you walked on the beach or something, you walked with your stockings on. So we would just walk across the street to the Merrimack and dangle our legs into the Merrimack with our stockings on. A little bit stinky. We didn't know why. We would go back to the motel and wash our stockings out, but we couldn't get the stink out, right? So one day, many days we were doing this, dangling our stockinged legs into the Merrimack, and this old, like, man of the mountains dude comes by, you know, suspenders, and he's got his walking staff, and, you know, scraggly red beard, and he's got this big button that says, "Save the Merrimack." And we're looking at him, we're like, from what? He goes, well, they dump X tons of raw sewage upstream every day. We're like, oh. Okay, so that's one of my funny New Hampshire stories. Okay. But that's not why I'm here. I'm from the church and I'm here to help. But we need some gallows humor today, right? Things are a mess. It's a mess, right? It is a mess. What's a mess? Everything. And it's always the church's fault. Right? Like even society, if there's something in society that's messed up, it's our fault. We're not evangelizing. When the church doesn't evangelize the culture evangelizes the church. Amen?
Amen.
Okay, so we got to keep the ancient faith. Keep the faith. What faith? The ancient faith. We know our faith. We know what's true. True, good, and beautiful. We're living in very confusing times. Not just outside the church, but within the church. There's a lot I could say about that, but I'm not going. That's not what I'm here for. Well, actually, I am. Yes, I am. Okay, but we're going to focus on theology of the body. The confusion that theology of the body can answer, which is actually the whole kit and caboodle. But we'll see. We have less than 4 hours together to cover everything. So, can I have 5 people tell me in one sentence why you're here? Just 5 people quickly. Yes?
Because it's a mess out there.
Because it's a mess. We need help. Yes?
To be able to answer my students' questions and help lead them to what is right and what is good and what is beautiful.
Yes. Okay. Answer students' questions. Yes, sister.
I love theology of the body.
Because she loves it. What community are you?
Daughters of Mary, Mother of Healing Love.
Beautiful. Are you a New Hampshire-based community? Nice. Yes.
So I'm just a mom who heard that you were...
Just a mom. You know, because that's like the bottom of the barrel or something. Yeah, go ahead.
Who heard that you were an amazing speaker by our youth minister, Sam.
Oh, thanks. One more. Yes.
I think it's very complicated, confusing
to make it simple. God is simple, right? God is simple. And that's why theology of the body is so hard to understand, because we're complicated. And you know what? Sin complicates everything, right? You know, God has this simple, beautiful plan for us, and when we start to sin, it's like when you lie, and then you have to remember who you told that lie to and exactly what you said, and the same with any sin, right? It gets really complicated. So actually what this is doing is simplifying. It's decomplicating. And the more you get into theology of the body, right, sister? It does become simple. And all of a sudden you're like, this is pathetically simple, but not easy to live. But life is boring without a challenge, right? Come on, come on. Okay. So my background is radical feminism, which laid the groundwork for gender ideology by denying that the body has anything to tell us about our identity. And that's why she said, I'm just a mom, because of radical feminism. It has tainted everything. We read the Bible with a radical feminist lens. And so we skip over all these like woman-affirming passages because it's like, well, that doesn't look like it's oppressing women. let me find the passages that sound like they are. And it was really theology of the body that got me out of my radical feminism. And it was, I call it my ongoing theology of the body conversion. Christopher West. Anybody not know who Christopher West is? Okay, so he is Mr. Theology of the Body. He is the first one who took the big text and simplified it for the rest of us. And he'll meet people. He runs the Theology of the Body Institute in Pennsylvania, which is your next step. You guys live so close, you're so blessed. So these are week-long seminars, and if you do 8 weeks, you can get certified from the Theology of the Body Institute. There's nothing like it in the world, probably, except the John Paul II Institute in Washington, D.C. That's like a degree where you matriculate there and no online stuff. And actually, Christopher's is not online either. You have to go there in person because we believe that theology of the body has to be heard from another body. There's something about this teaching that's an in-person teaching. So he meets people, Christopher West said, he meets people who say, oh yeah, I know theology of the body, I saw YouTube. And he's like, I'm still studying theology of the body. And it's not study in the sense of a head trip. Please, 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 I beg of you, theology of the body is not a head trip. It's a fun theological exercise because it's to go like, whoa, this is airtight. This is foolproof. This is fun. But that's not really what it's for. Body. Body, body, body. And because of radical feminism, which laid the groundwork for gender ideology, we think nothing today of pulling things apart that go together, just ripping them apart. Soul and body. We've separated soul from body, spiritual from physical in so many ways. And what is the definition of the separation of soul and body? Death. That's why we have a culture of death. Now, if we had time, I would show you a video. Maybe you can Google it. Not right now, but it's called "I'm Afraid of That Hat." Like that's what the girl says anyway. Now, again, it's about a mega hat. It's not about mega. This is not a political video. Please, I beg of you, this is not political. Listen to what this girl says about feelings being facts. There's no such thing as facts, there's just feelings. Feelings are, so we've gone all spiritual, in case you're wondering which way we've gone. We haven't gone all physical, we've gone all spiritual. And we do this in the church as well. If you had told me 15 years ago that I was going to be standing up in front of groups talking about sex and explaining church teaching, remember, radical feminists, just keep that in mind. Everything I say today would have been totally repugnant to me. Like, totally. I would have told you that you're out of your gourd, 1 crouton short of a Caesar salad, elevator doesn't go to the top floor, not playing with a full deck. So let me tell you a little story about church teaching. Sorry, I try so hard not to be sarcastic. I don't think of myself as a sarcastic person, but maybe I am. Anyway, I was in Calgary. I need some coffee. This is my Bubba cup. Okay. Anyway. Fueled by coffee and Jesus. Okay. So I was in Calgary, and I was doing a whole weekend of Theology of the Body talks, and this 12-year-old kid shows up with his dad. Smart kid. And the reason he was coming to my talks is because his best friend is identifying as trans now. He goes to an all-boys Catholic school. His friend says, I'm really a woman, and he wants to transition. And this kid thought that was really wrong. And he thought he had to not be friends with him anymore. And I kept telling him, Adrian, we don't cut people off. We love people. This is a smart kid. We have to stop talking down to kids, talking baby talk when it comes to religion. They're smart. They're taking AP chemistry and honors this and that. And then we talk baby talk when it comes to religion. They can handle philosophy. They should be reading G.K. Chesterton by the time they're 13. You know what I'm talking? Anyway, don't get me started. Okay. So he learned what ideology meant, because I was talking about gender ideology. What's an ideology?
Belief system.
It's a belief system. It's more than that. So it's taking a little piece of truth, or worse if it's not true, that little piece, and then it blows it up to be the explanation for everything. It's the overarching narrative, and ideologies are always imposed because they don't make sense. And nobody would ever willingly sign up for them except a handful of people, and so they are imposed. Ideologies are always imposed, like communism. That's an ideology that is imposed, okay? So he learned what gender ideology meant. So he comes up to my table, kept coming back, asking me questions, he says. So isn't the Catholic Church just an ideology? I said, no, Adrian. I said, it's God. And he got this big smile on his face, because this kid had a lot of faith. And I said, people like to dismiss things as church teaching, or even the Bible or something, right? It's an easy way to dismiss things. And I said, but this is how God is communicating to us, through the church he founded. Either he founded the Catholic Church or he didn't. The Bible is God's word or it's not. And this is how God is speaking to us. So I said, don't let people fool you with that, Adrian. Oh, that's just church teaching, that silly Catholic Church, that draconic Catholic Church. Nope. So he got it. And I said, Adrian, don't abandon your friend right now. He needs you more than ever. Don't. So he finally got it through his head that you can love somebody and not love what they do. Or love what they believe. Even if they're trying to force you by saying, you have to. If you love me, you have to accept everything I believe, everything I do, my lifestyle. It's no. Can we be for a soldier and not for the war? Yeah. Can we? We can be for the soldiers on both sides. We think this is an unjust war and nobody should be getting killed, right? Okay. Let me just show you a few books. So this is the text, the big old text, Man and Woman, He Created Them. Has an excellent introduction. I'm all for reading original sources, but it is a tough read. And it's kind of like the Bible. So if you start just from the beginning, you're going to hit Deuteronomy and Leviticus really fast. And you're going to give up. You know your New Year's resolution, I'm going to read the Bible this year, and then you hit Deuteronomy and Leviticus and you give up. So if you jump around, there's some much more readable parts of it. And again, I'm all for that, so that you know that yes, John Paul II said this, or he didn't, right? And I just think it's fine, we're in the Puritan Center. Because John Paul II talks about the extremes when it comes to sexuality, right? Of Puritanism and then libertinism, or the sexual revolution. Okay. What's the alternative? Virtue lies in the middle. It's redemption of the body, redemption of desires. Christopher West did a paraphrase. So actually if you don't want to do the original source, this is the paraphrase. And he has excerpts from the book, sidebars, stories, anecdotes. Fantastic. Love and Responsibility, John Paul II wrote before Theology of the Body. So this he wrote in the 50s, came out in English, I believe, in 1960. And it's a much easier read than Theology of the Body. A lot of people call this the philosophy of the body. And it's not terribly religious. So he talks about what is the human person, therefore, what is the nature of human love? What does human love require of us? Fascinating stuff. Okay. And in a lot of ways, I use this, and sometimes, I use this a lot. And we'll talk more about that. It's a little tiny book by Jason Everett, just brand new, Theology of the Body in 1 hour. Now, I don't recommend using this as just a shortcut. It's almost better as a review. Like once you know Theology of the Body and you want to encapsulate it, this is by Emily Stimson, These Beautiful Bones, an Everyday Theology of the Body. So if you want to just have she's a great writer, if you just want to have a great read about how can I see Theology of the Body everywhere, when I'm cooking, when I'm gardening, things like that. This is the only Spark Notes that I know of for Theology of the Body. It's skeletal. This I do recommend if you want to just get a synopsis of each chapter, questions, which scriptures JP2 uses for each chapter, just kind of a skeletal outline. This is another lovely little book called Theology of the Body Made Simple. It only deals with Genesis, but that's all you need. If we lost the whole Bible and just had the first 3 chapters of Genesis, everything's in there. The fall, Mary, Jesus, the tree of life, the cross, redemption, etc. Okay. There are some Catholics who will not believe something unless Thomas Aquinas said it. You know who you are. So for all the TOB skeptics out there on the trad side, because there's also the skeptics on the progressive side, right? Which probably means that you are in the radical middle. Aquinas and Theology of the Body, written by a Dominican. So this used to be $75 US, I think in terms of US and Canadian funds. It's now like $50 paperback. So good. Let me explain something to you about how our book system works. This book here is what we call other publishers. The other table, these 2 tables are other publishers besides the Daughters of St. Paul. That table is our table. Now, I brought these books from Canada. We're trying to figure out how to do this because I'm on both sides of the border. These are Canadian price stickers on the back. You don't have to worry about that other table. So what we're going to do is we're going to charge you the US, like this says $17 Canadian. We're going to charge you that in US dollars divided by 1.2. And what does that mean? That means you're going to pay a little more, maybe $2, $3 more than it would just be plain old US price. But if you have to buy it from Amazon, you're going to have to pay postage anyway, right? Unless you have Amazon Prime. How many people have Amazon Prime? Wow! Okay, well, it's your choice. Yeah. Just because if we do a straight exchange, we lose money, a lot of money. Like, it just doesn't work. The dollar's so low in Canada, plus we pay tariffs. We buy our US books in US dollars that we have to buy US dollars. We have a brokerage fee at the border to process stuff when it goes over. So these books have been paid for many, many times. So we need to recoup. All right. But I hope you'll be tempted enough to get them today. Okay. Oh, and I did a mini-series for EWTN called Digital Catholics. And this is great because there's such an overlap of theology of the body and media. What else are we doing with media but looking at images of the body and how the human person is being treated and presented in media? This is just straight up, no matter what it says on the back, this one is $25 US. Done. That's what you'd pay here too. And also, we are embodied people. Do we really want to spend our lives in virtual reality? So that's another big question and overlap of theology of the body and media, which one of the segments is theology of the body and media. So welcome to the wonderful world of theology of the body. How many people know some theology of the body? Like you feel like you kind of have a grasp on it a bit. You could explain it. Excellent. How many people you don't really know it that well, or this is your introduction today? Wonderful. Thank you for coming, and I feel very humbled and privileged to be the one to introduce you to the wonderful world of theology of the body. And because this is ministry, it's going to be a little heavier than the normal just fun stuff that I do. We will do some fun, but we have to get heavy too. Okay. There's many ways to sum up what theology of the body is and why it's desperately needed today. And why it's not only the answer to all of today's hot-button issues, but also to the deepest longings of our hearts, everyone in here. Theology of the body is a return to the body. It's a coming home to the body. Because we are tripping out on the spiritual today in so many ways. We think our souls are our true selves and our bodies are just this raw material to be manipulated. Most Christians today are actually Gnostics, people who go all spiritual, and the body is inconsequential. It's just a thing. So John Paul II, that great philosopher, theologian, scripture scholar, and humanitarian, realized that this all-spiritual problem was the problem of the day. And if we could answer that, we could answer many, many things. So he made it his life's work to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, body and soul. Now, not everyone digs theology of the body. You dig? There's a lot of people who do not like it. And you who travel in more like you might be talking with certain spiritual / religious / academic / people who do not like theology of the body, and they will go on at length about why they don't like it. We don't have time to get into all the objections, but I'm going to just talk about two. And I mean, there are critiques, but they're wrong. So one will say that theology of the body is going backwards. So oppressing women. I have my whole testimony that I do from radical feminism to feminine genius, where I explain this is good for women. Theology of the body is good for women. So some people will accuse theology of the body of wanting to turn back the hands of time, turn back the clock, go back to some idyllic maybe 1950s that never existed. Or it didn't exist the way we envision it. Theology of the body is the way forward. Okay, so John Paul II took into account ancient history, the entire 20th century, up to 1974 is when he began writing Theology of the Body on December 8. He finished it in 1980 when he became, he finished in 1978 when he became Pope. It took him 4 years. Gee, can you say genius? Okay. And he took into account the sexual revolution. He almost foresaw the sexual revolution because Love and Responsibility was written in the 50s. And you're like, how did he? Well, the 60s started in the 50s, for those who are woke, who know that, right? Okay. Playboy started in 1953. So, okay. He takes into account the women's movement. He takes into account all these things. He's answering Manichaeism, Descartes, Kant, the Enlightenment, Darwin, Freud, Nietzsche, Marx, and many others. If we threw the baby, quite literally sometimes, out with the bathwater in the past, well, we want to go back and get the baby, not the bathwater, okay? And I see a little bit of that today. How many people see some going back to get the bathwater? Don't want that. And ladies, We gained some great things from the women's movement. We are not giving those up, okay? We don't want to do that. But theology of the body knows the difference. Real good theology of the body knows the difference between the baby and the bathwater. Number two, the other criticism is that theology of the body is physicalism. Has anyone heard that? Theology of the body is physicalism, or sometimes called biologism, which means that we turn natural functions of our body into moral imperatives, right? That we are just slaves to our body. Whatever our body's doing right now, we have to just follow it. And that's what being natural means. No. We don't have our bodies dictating to us. We have free will, and we have our intelligence, and we have God's guidance to tell us what, and it doesn't take much actually to understand what our bodies are saying, the language of our bodies. And think about that. That makes no sense, because if we were just to follow our body's natural processes, we say processes in Canada, no interference, right? No hearing aids, no pacemakers. Cancer's natural. It just happened in nature, right? Okay, so we can see that makes no sense, this physicalism and biologism. However, we do look for the design of God in our bodies, the design of God in nature. I was just listening to this amazing, anyone know Mars Hill Audio? I highly recommend that. It is a highbrow Protestant done by an Anglo-Catholic who used to work for NPR, and he talks to authors. Anyway, very quickly, he was talking to this like hippie Christian farmer dude who's at this like international level of farmers and goes around speaking, and he was at the meeting where they decided to feed cows to cows, right? So, which caused what? Mad cow disease. And he said, I didn't know all the science. He just said, they're herbivores. Cows are this is the design of God. Cows are herbivores. This won't be good. And nobody listened to him. So we look at the design and purpose of our bodies as a whole and the parts of our bodies. So we want to go in, so for example, this moral theologian, wonderful priest up in Canada, Father Kevin Belgrave, teaches at the seminary in Toronto. He said, sister, don't say artificial contraception. Because the problem is not that it's artificial and we just need natural contraception. He said, there is nothing more natural than a prosthetic arm. Stop and think about that. There is nothing more natural than a prosthetic arm. Why? Because it does what an arm is supposed to do. So it fills in for that arm and does what an arm is supposed to do. Whereas contraception thwarts the body, takes a natural, healthy part of the system in the body, we have different systems, reproductive system, and makes it malfunction over time. So he said the point is not artificial and natural, the point is not helping the body do what it does, but going against the body. And so natural family planning works with our body, right? Works with our rhythms. Women have to become aware of their cycles, these amazing cycles that we have, how our body works, etc. So what theology of the body is saying, that we must truly love our bodies. I did a whole talk with Christopher West in Calgary recently. Love thy body. Love thy body. We have a book, Love Thy Body. Okay. We have to respect our bodies, the design and purpose that's already there. And it takes a lifetime to learn to read that more and more, rather than imposing our will on our bodies as though they are some piece of raw material to do what we want with. Pope Paul VI in Humani Vitae said, and here's the connection between transgender, in the sense of trying to surgically alter our bodies to the other sex. One of the 4 consequences, he said, would happen if society wholeheartedly embraced contraception was we will begin to think we can do whatever we want with our bodies. That was one of the 4 right? So what could be more radical manipulation of our bodies than to say, oh, I can become the other sex just by surgeries and hormones, which does incredible violence to the body. If you pump your body full of other sex hormones, wow, this is why we hear trans health. And you think, trans health, what does that mean? Don't they get colds like everybody else? No, it's about, these people do not live that long, okay? Depending on how many years you've been pumping your body full of other sex hormones, especially testosterone in women's bodies, right? You do not mess around with tea, okay? Tea is very powerful. Old men shouldn't be taking tea, okay? There's a reason their bodies can't handle it anymore, okay? Very powerful, strong stuff. See, and again, whenever sex is abused or misunderstood, women are always the first victims. Women suffer more from all this stuff. Okay, but that's another talk. So, rather than overriding and thwarting our body's natural purposes, engaging in risky and unhealthy behaviors, using and abusing our bodies as playthings, we want to work with our bodies. So the language of the body is revealing God to us, it's revealing us to ourselves, and us to each other. The language of Christianity is the body. We are a fleshy, earthy, grounded religion. We're not a religion. It's just reality. Think about it. Are we just a religion among other religions? I think that anybody in a religion should believe that theirs is not a religion, that that's reality, right? You don't just pick a religion or I was born into this religion. It's like either God revealed all this stuff and came into history and Jesus really is God or he's not. It's either reality or it's not. Jesus is in the Blessed Sacrament or he's not. So it's not like, well, he's there for me, but he's not there for you because you're not a Catholic. And this is how we think today, right? Relativism. I don't believe in gravity, I don't believe in gravity, I don't believe in gravity. The universe doesn't care. Reality doesn't care what you believe. Okay, all right. So most religions are spiritual. They're very, very spiritual. We're not. We are physical. We have the sacraments. God working through matter to change your reality for the better. Okay. Our God became man. We have dogmas about the body. Did you know that? There's stuff you must believe about the body. De fide. Or you really can't call yourself Catholic. Our faith is concrete, tangible, and physical. This should be good news, because we love nature. That was like my dichotomy as a radical feminist. I love nature, but not the nature of my body. So, what is the theology of the body? Jesus is the theology of the body. Jesus, the incarnation. Mary, the God-bearer, is the theology of the body. The new Adam and the new Eve of the new creation. Now, we might think we have a soul problem today because people don't believe in God and they don't pray or worship, and we do. But if people are saying, I can do whatever I want with my body, we have a body problem. Okay. So the body has meaning already, and it's our job to discover that meaning and live it. Okay, how are we doing for time? I haven't even changed the slide once. Okay. So what does theology mean? Oh, by the way, if you would like to get the PowerPoint, and I'm going to give you handouts at the break, and all kinds of digital goodies that you can share, videos, etc., on gender, on all kinds of things. text your email to this texting service. Just your email, no other words. Do not text your cell phone number, because once you text it, they have your cell phone number. And we're not going to text you all this stuff. We're going to email it to you. I have to say that. So, just your email address. Nothing else, not thanks, not hey, I met Sister Lena in New Hampshire. We know who you are and what you want. Okay? It doesn't work. Just your email address. Okay? Do it within 24 hours or it doesn't work. Okay? So what do we mean by theology? Let's do basics. What's theology mean? Study of God. We can have a study of food. What is food saying about God? What is God saying about food? We can have a theology of sports. What is sports saying about God? What is God saying about sports? And the answer is a lot. But the human body is saying the most about God. Why? Because we are the only things in creation, the only creatures in the image of God. So that means our bodies must be like God somehow. Our bodies are theology textbooks, again, that we have to learn how to read. Now, I'm skipping a piece that I normally do with folks all the time because it's so basic. And for the first time, I'm going to skip it just because of time constraints. And because a lot of you know theology of the body, but you probably still never heard it the way I explain it. I get really fundamental, like really, really basic. So I do basically a whole thing on the resurrection of the body. I start there. Let's start at the very ending, a very good place to start. Where the heck did we come from and where the heck are we going? What is all this for, right? And the point is it just our souls that are made in the image of God, or our bodies also? Which is it? Both. We can't have part of us made in the image of God, and we could almost make the argument that our bodies are more in the image of God than our souls. What? Why?
Jesus. Because our body is formed and our soul is not.
An image is something you can we see our souls? No. So if you're in the image of God, you're an image. The body is made in the image of God. But first, do you believe God loves you? Yes. No, really, I mean really, seriously. Yes. Really? All the time? Even when we're bad? Even when we're really bad? Yeah. Yes. Somebody said, even more than, right? If that were possible. But God loves us the same all the time. Because God is love. He can't love us any more than he's loving us right now. He just keeps pouring out his love and graces on everyone, right? What did Jesus say? The good and the bad. It rains on everyone, sunshine on everyone. That's what God's love is like, just pouring down. It's up to us to receive it or not, right? Because if I didn't believe God loved me, I wouldn't worship or follow a God that I didn't believe loved me. Because his ways are too hard. His ways are too hard, right? Have you ever noticed that God's ways are not the easy, convenient, shortcut ways? They take a little more time, a little more thought, a little more elbow grease, a little more devotion, right? But they are golden. God's ways are golden for us. How many people started doing things God's way in some aspect of their life, even if you didn't fully understand it, and it started to pay off? How many people have already experienced that? Yeah. And if you haven't, stick with it, because it will. But you got to be wholehearted. The Bible says God is wholehearted to the wholehearted. He doesn't know what to do with half your heart. He's like, gee, thanks. I guess I'll just look at this. Thanks for half your heart. We hedge all our bets today, right? Plan Bs and trapdoors and no, you got to be all in. When we're all in with God, desperation is underrated. Go all in. You can trust him. Jeff Cavin says the whole Bible is, I love you, do you trust me? I love you, do you trust me? Okay. And we have a cheat today. It's called science. Okay? So we have science that people 10, 20 years ago didn't even have. Or we can look at what God says and say, isn't that great? We can look at what God says. One of my sisters said, you gotta shut your memes off, because your gifts off, because people get all distracted. Okay. Sorry, okay, we're just gonna freeze him there, okay. They're meant to be enjoyed, but, okay. So we have a cheat now where we can look at something God says. God says this is good for me. What does science say? The same thing. Science affirms God. We can fact check God today. Okay? Is this really good for my body, my spirit, my relationships? Yes. Yes, it's excellent for them. God says this is not good for me. This is bad for me. God says this is what's right and wrong. Is that true? What does science say? Same thing. But should we obey God just because he said so? Yeah, we should. But it's not arbitrary. Nothing God says is arbitrary. Nothing. I read a Christian, and he was saying, I don't understand some things that God says we shouldn't do. I guess he's just like testing us. I guess it's just like to see if we'll obey. No. God doesn't do that. It's all about the laws of nature, and not just laws. That's legalistic, right? Sorry if there's any lawyers here. Just a lawyer, okay. It's the order, right? The divine order. And only when there's order can beauty emerge, right? Scientists are fascinated by the order in the universe because what happens? Beauty emerges from that order. And also, how many people are parents? How many people are youth ministers? How many people work with young people? Okay. Do you want them to be happy? I think you're here because you want them to be happy. Do you know how the ancients defined happiness? Living in accord with our nature. Living in accord with our purpose, our design, our destiny. If we are fighting that, we cannot be happy. When I was a radical feminist, I guess I thought I was happy, but I wasn't. I really wasn't. Looking back, it was a very sad existence. I was angry a lot of the time, and I was fighting my own nature, suppressing my own nature, right? So think about this. We want our young people and ourselves to be happy, not just for here, but for hereafter. It's one big picture, right? So yeah, we should do what God says, even if we didn't have the science. So I'm going to prove to you today that God loves you. You didn't think that was possible, but it is. Now, can we see God face to face right now? No. Can we see our souls? No. So we have a problem. God is spiritual, and we're physical. We're also spiritual, but we can't see that part of ourselves either. So God has to communicate with us and interact with us through matter. Right? And this is the genius of John Paul II. He said, instead of starting with the spiritual, spiritual, spooky, we're going to start with the physical. Right? When I was coming up in CCD, remember? I went to public schools. Can you tell? No, just kidding. No, I had a great public school education. Wow. So grateful for that.
In Massachusetts?
In Belmont, yes.
Oh my goodness.
This is before there was like lots of ideology in the schools, right? It was, and our parents ran the school board. They ran the schools. Our teachers were terrified we were going to tell our parents something. Boy, have times changed. I remember them whipping out Mao's little red book. Remember how fashionable that was? We're like, you can't do that. We're going to tell our parents. Please don't tell your parents. Let's get back to that. Okay, I can tell you so many stories like that. Actually, our town had a high Jewish population, parents were going to make sure their kids got an excellent education. They were religious Jews, so the thing was, your teachers are not allowed to talk about religion at all in the classroom. End of story. And so we all benefited from that, from the Jewish parents in our town. They were the most active of the parents. All the parents were active, but the Jewish parents, we did not mess with them. So anyway, way off track. So John Paul II's genius said, we're going to, instead of catechizing from the spiritual and then somehow trying to connect that with the physical, we're going to start with the physical and then connect it to the spiritual. What's easier? Start with the spiritual? No. What's easy, and then we can just like blah, 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 and like, so this is why I hated religion growing up. There was nothing I could verify. There was nothing concrete I could see and taste and experience and feel and whatever, right? So is John Paul II denying the spiritual? Of course not. He's saying, let's start with what we can see, the physical. He says, I know people today don't believe in sacred authorities and sacred texts and all of that. But has the world given up on the body? Love? Sex? Beauty? Relationships? No. And God is all about that. Not just like, well, let's start there and jump off. We can actually stay there. Okay? Because God is incarnated in us and in our world and in all the good stuff He gave us. That's why our world is so obsessed with sex, because they don't know what it is. They're dancing all around it. They know it's really good, but they don't know what it is. I think Miley Cyrus was a perfect example of that, right? Remember when she was twerking and, she's got all that tattoos all over her body and doing all this, living a wild and crazy life and saying crazy things. And she was like, will somebody please tell me what this is? What it's for? Who I am? But she's gone back to her country girl roots now. She married Liam Hemsworth. She's insanely happy. Okay. Good for her. Good for Miley. Okay. One of our sisters was praying for her. And the sister's also from Tennessee, and she was like praying her guts out. So I think Sister Carly helped Miley. Okay. So as humans, we understand, feel, experience, know all of life through the senses. Tommy says, all knowledge comes through the senses first, and then we extrapolate, then we abstract. Okay. I'm just lying on my bed thinking, so I'm not using my body. What organ of the body thinks? The brain. We're always using our bodies. We can't do it otherwise. So God must be accessible to our bodies. What is the Eucharist? The body of Christ, God's body. God feeding us and loving us with His own body. This, in a sense, is the highest and primary way we experience God in our bodies. If we had to get one Bible passage to sum up all of theology of the body, this is my body given up for you. What does the church respond? Mary is the church. Be it done to me according to your word. Okay, let's keep moving on. Now, again, with great fear and trepidation, I am skipping our resurrection of the body piece. But I'm just going to ask you a question. Are we spiritual beings? Are we spiritual beings? No. We are human beings, body and soul. Do we have a spiritual nature?
Absolutely.
No. We have a human nature,
Oh, yeah.
body and soul. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. All right. Body, body, body. Body, body, body. Okay? Wayne Dyer, remember Wayne Dyer? PBS, the only religion PBS will put on is like New Age, right? So he says, we're not human beings. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And we're going to go back to being Casper the Friendly Ghost. Float around for all eternity. No. Resurrection of the body. Central mystery of our faith. It's not even the incarnation. The central mystery, God could have become man. The central mystery of our faith is the Easter. We're heading toward Easter. The resurrection of the body. What, Jesus' body? Yeah. But what was the point of him doing that? So that we can resurrect. Are we getting these very bodies back?
No.
Yeah. Okay, I get you.
I don't want it.
Okay. It's going to be your body, but your perfect body.
Amen.
Your glorified body, right? You have some chronic illness, going to be healed. You have depression, going to be healed. Your best self, body and soul. So save your money. We have the best cosmetic surgeons going to be back, and it's free. All free. I don't want my body back. I don't like my nose. It's going to be your nose, but your perfect nose. If it's over here, it's going to be over here. Okay? But do you think we're going to care about that? Are we going to be so obsessed with our looks and looking in the mirror all day and perfect and pretty? No. Beauty is important. Beauty is important. Anyone see The Good Place on Netflix? All the people from Hell are taking selfies all the time. Yeah. So we're getting these very bodies back. The human person is body and soul together forever. John Paul II calls us body-person. He likes hyphens. I do too, because they keep things that go together. This is what I do now. Doctrinal-pastoral. Those who are woke know what I'm saying. It's not doctrine is this like ideal, but you can't really live it. So you have to do the pastoral thing, which is over here. It's like, no. Doctrinal-pastoral. How do we know what to do? We look at doctrine. How do we live the doctrine? Well, that's pastoral. Get it? I have it all figured out. I'm just kidding. Okay. Just kidding. Okay. We are body persons. That sounds awkward, but it's actually a beautiful way to talk about human beings. Because there are persons that are not bodies in the universe. Who? Angels? No. Just angels, and who else? God who? God who? God the Father? God the Holy Spirit. Not the Son. The Son has his human body forever. His human male body forever. Would you do that if you were God? If you were pure spirit, would you take on a human body forever? What does that say about the human body? That it's incredible. It's more than just this raw material to be used, right? No. Jesus could not have become a wolf. The human body is already in the image of God, so it interfaces with the divine. That's why we can receive the Eucharist. That's why Jesus could become man. Our bodies are already more than meets the eye. Okay. So, the human person is body and soul together forever. Say that with me. The human person is body and soul together forever. We have this brief little period where they get separated and they're back together again. So do you think if we understand that, it's going to change how we live our lives now? If I realize this body is me, and I'm going to be a body forever. Okay, let's just do this. Okay. Now, this is rock bottom. If you don't remember anything else from today, remember this. This is life-changing. Which is correct to say? I have a body or I am a body?
I am a body.
Now, please, how many people before today would have said, I have a body? Or kind of used to use that language? I did it all my life, right? But I hope you can see there's a world of difference between these two statements. If I have a body, it's not me. It's a thing. I have things. I have possessions. And I do whatever I want with them because they're just things. And my true self is my soul, that higher, better, spiritual part of me that's more like God and is that spiritual, right? My body's that lowly, earthly part of me that's kind of animalistic and is a bit tainted and it's always dragging me down. No. My body is every bit me. It's every bit holy, every bit sacred, every bit my true self, every bit human, every bit good. You can't be human with no body. Well, I mean, you can, but so when we die, and the body and soul are ripped apart, this is bad, right? If this is the definition of a human being, body and soul together forever, then this can't be good, right? To rip body and soul apart. Tommy says, we become incomplete persons when we die. We become incomplete persons because my body and soul are not together. And this is the definition of a human person. We like to say disembodied spirit, but I like the way Tommy says it better. We become incomplete persons until the resurrection of the body. Okay. So, splitting of body and soul is going to be the worst day of your life. Because you're dead. Yeah. It's not good. You know that death was never intended for human beings, right? So it's natural. All living things are born and they grow and they get sick and old and die. That was never God's plan for human beings. Remember Garden of Eden? Going to live blissfully happy with the Lord forever. And God says, here, choose life or death. What did we choose? So smart. Yeah. Wrap it up to go. It's like, no, okay. But God always has a better plan, right? Plan B, right? So remember this. I don't have a body, I am a body. So if anybody asks you what you did this weekend and you're like, oh, I had it this weekend, no, this is Thursday. Is this Thursday? Yeah. What did you do Thursday? Oh, I went to the seminar on theology of the body. What's theology of the body? There's a lot of answers, right? But I am a body. I don't have a body, I am a body. That's what theology of the body is. And it's hard to accept this for a lot of people, for a lot of reasons. Especially women, because we have the lion's share of sexuality, ladies. Okay, we're so out of touch with our bodies. When I speak to women's groups only, they're like, huh? Okay, first of all, if you don't know what lion's share is, what it means is if a lion and a mouse were to have a meal together, who would have more food? The lion, right? So I'm like, ladies, I really have to explain this. We have monthly cycles, men don't. We get pregnant for 9 months. And we have the pain and peril of childbirth and breastfeeding. Oh, that! Yes, that is huge to our lives. Even if you're not going to use that apparatus. Okay? That apparatus has been a huge part of my life. Let me tell you. Okay? So sometimes it's hard for us. As a radical feminist, I didn't like that. Like, why do we have to have the babies? Right? Why do we have all this stuff? Well, is it a burden or a privilege? Or a little bit of both sometimes. Right? So as a human being, one of the most basic things we need to do is accept our bodiliness. We're not just souls, we're not just brains and vats. We're bodies, right? And I think people with chronic pain or certain illnesses and stuff, but listen to the disabled. Are they saying, kill me, kill me? Are they saying, I wish I was never born? Is that the message you're hearing from the disabled? That's not what I hear. I hear them fighting for their rights. Saying, I'm not dead yet, right? They wear those signs, I'm not dead yet, and they love life, and they have the highest quality of life that they can, and all of this stuff, right? And the fact that we know we'll be healed in eternity, right? It's called the healing of eternity. Isn't that beautiful? Listen in the Easter liturgy. The healing of eternity. Will arthritis be healed? Will lupus be healed? Will migraine headaches? Sounds like a healing service, right? Migraine headaches! Okay. What about gender dysphoria? Gender confusion? Yes, it's going to so used to, we're so used to toothaches. It's like, we can't even imagine. No, it's going to be healed. It's all going to be healed. Okay. Heaven is a good deal. Right? Little brief span of life and then forever. Okay. I am the body. And there's two different ways to be, not have a body. What are they? Don't say alive and dead.
Conscious and unconscious.
Don't say conscious and unconscious. You're such a good sport, Sheila. Thanks for sitting right in front of me, right in the
I
country.
love you.
I love you too.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. There are two different ways to be, not have a body. There's two different ways to be in the image of God, and they're not the same. Male and female, thank you. Ooh, that's politically incorrect. You're not supposed to say that. I don't care. I don't care. Arrest me. Sue me. Seriously, I'm willing to go to prison on this. I'm dead serious. And up in Canada, I very well may. So bake me a cake, put the file inside. We are legislating on people's feelings today. We are legislating on people's feelings. That our feelings don't stay the same. They're all that. Okay, so this is critical and crucial and basic. So basic. So here's the thing. I think we don't have like a category where to teach this stuff. Right? So we teach the Ten Commandments and the Beatitudes and the Gospels and the parables. Like, yeah, that's great. We have to teach who we are. We have to teach identity. We have to teach the human person. We have to teach human dignity. It's not something we just know. I think we think our young people understand, well, all human beings have dignity. They don't understand that or what that means. We have to teach the human person. We have to teach human dignity. And I don't care where, how, when we do that, but we see what happens when we don't do that, right? Father Grishel used to say, give your kids a good religion or they'll make a bad one for themselves, right? So, yeah, but we'll talk about that at the end, about the wrap up. What can we do? How can we further this? Because if we have nothing to chew on, no knowledge, we're going to go elsewhere. And today, our young people get 5 or 6 hours of anti-theology of the body a day on their devices. They can go on a YouTube and watch hours and hours and hours of a young person transitioning, just talking to their webcam, right? Telling them that, you should transition too. So we have a lot of work to do. And we can't be afraid. We can't be afraid. And the more you know, the less afraid you are. Amen? Amen. Okay. Okay, just gonna go through the stuff that we didn't do. The resurrection body stuff. It's not going away, folks. There's going to be a new heavens and a new earth. God is a materialist. He loves stuff. He made so much of it. It's going to be renewed as well. It's going to be glorified just like our bodies. It's all coming back. The beautiful Merrimack, I went over the river. That is one beautiful river, man. Like all those little islands and the rapids and wow. Okay. So, this is Theology of the Body. It's a Bible study of the human body from the first book of the Bible, which is, to the last book of the Bible, which is, this is the Bible. It's a love story from Genesis to Revelation. Satan says it's a rule book. He a liar. He always a liar. Don't listen to him. I made a meme, the Blessed Mother and the Devil, and my mother told me not to talk to you. Did you ever notice that the Bible begins with an earthly marriage, that of whom? They're called husband and wife. Right? There really wasn't anybody else. There was no CatholicMatch.com. There's such a thing, CatholicMatch.com. And it ends with a heavenly marriage, that of whom? Christ and the church, God in us. His plan is all of humanity. Okay? And right smack in the middle, we have one of the most beautiful, ancient, erotic love poems ever written. It's studied just as ancient literature. The Song of Songs or Canticle of Canticles. It's the most commentated on book of the Bible, especially by saints and mystics. Can be read as between a husband and a wife, or God and the soul. So how many people, when they read a novel, flip to the end, see if they like how it ends? They're going to spend all that time with no. So what if the book begins and ends the same way, and smack in the middle is very important? It's all the same: marriage, marriage, marriage. Tells you a lot about the Bible, right? Tells you a lot about the book. Why did God choose marriage as the overriding image of how he loves us? Why not friends, friendship? Why not parent-child? Why not cousins, colleagues, your Uber driver? My mother says, Uba. She called me up, I love that Uba. I'm like, I've lost the accent, as you can tell. I said, what's Uba? She's like, you know that car that comes to your house and picks you up? And I'm like, oh, Uber. She goes, this is on that word? Why? I guess we'll do it. Why is marriage the overarching image of how God loves us in the Bible? Yeah, thank you. She goes, T-O-B. Total gift of self. Total and complete. The most intimate union we know of, body and soul, on this earth. And new life comes from it. This is where new persons come from. Okay? Or as one woman said, it contains all the loves. Isn't that beautiful? And even though it's the ordinary way of holiness, most people are called to marriage, but not all. It's still this incredible, extraordinary participation in God's love and life that not everybody's going to know. Not everybody's called to that. So G.K. Chesterton said, the most extraordinary thing in the world is an ordinary man, an ordinary woman, and their ordinary children. John Paul II said we have to make more of ordinary love. We think it's just a default thing. No. This is the image. This is the image we have. Okay. Marriage is how we know God loves us. That's why we have to see happy, healthy, holy marriages for the long haul. Otherwise, we don't know what God's faithful love looks like. It's just everybody abandoning everybody, right? And that's why it's the most important thing on earth. And that's why the church is careful with it. I don't say the church is strict with marriage. She's careful with it because it's the way to the reality. It's what we have. And God chooses the best images for us. He chooses the closest, best images for us. But first, before we can make a total gift of ourselves in marriage to someone else, the body is for the Lord, and the Lord is for the body. Isn't that beautiful? This is so overlooked, I think. I think it's one of the most beautiful Bible passages, so overlooked. And even after marriage, is our body still for the Lord for the body? Yeah. We just get both. What? So we're not choosing a person over God when we get married, right? God or the girl, God or the guy, I'll take the girl, I'll take the guy. No, we get both. It's a twofer. We go to God together. We go to God through each other. Ooh, that's a better deal. Poor sister. Poor father. We don't have that special someone. We don't get both? No. We go direct. We buy direct. You don't mess with the rest when you got the best. Okay? So father and sister are not missing out on anything. We're just living the heavenly marriage now. Yeah. When God called me, I hit the jackpot. Okay? My husband owns the store. My favorite definition of God is the source of all good things. The source of all good things. We're going to talk more about that when we talk about going to God through desires. Okay. So our bodies are in relationship with the Lord, whether we know it or not. Our body has its own, not to split us, don't like doing that splitting body and soul, but our body is in relationship with the Lord, has its own relationship with the Lord, whether we're aware of that or not. We need to become more aware of that. So no one's left out. Not single people, not widows, not widowers, not consecrated religious, etc. Because we have what's called the spousal meaning of the body. Okay, some big flashing purple neon theology of the body terms. Language of the body, spousal meaning of the body. Okay? What does that mean? It means that a man's body makes no sense without a woman's body, the design of it. The design of a woman's body makes no sense without a man's body. We are obviously made for each other, and we're called to give that gift of self, even if we're not called to earthly marriage. Right? So do I have to give of myself, make a gift of myself in some way? Yes. Do I have to be fruitful in some way? Yes. What does anything do when it reaches maturity and ripens? What does it do? It bears fruit, it gives life. So I was asking a group, and this woman said, it moves out. I said, and then it moves back in. So we are all called to give and receive true love and true life according to our vocation. But marriage is the model for all vocations. Everyone is called to true love. True love is for everyone, not just a chosen few. And there is a cosmic dimension to marriage. Now, this is one of my favorite slides in the whole wide world because I made it. But this is the culmination of my radical feminist journey. Because really, my radical feminism was, I was there. I thought that was the answer. Actually, it was my internal framework. I didn't have anything else except this radical feminist framework inside. And it's kind of like our assumptions that we just assume are true. We don't look at them. We don't put them out on the table and look at them because this is what we've always believed to be true. We haven't even articulated it. It's in our bones. And it might be wrong. Right? So, not 100% wrong. You know what I'm saying? But a little warped, right? So this is not the sun. This is God. This is not the earth. It's the entire created universe. Everything God ever created. And God's original plan from the beginning was to unite himself to his creation. So we are in process, right? We're in a story. We're in this linear story of God's love for us. Salvation history. He's working it, right? We live after the incarnation, 2,000 years after the incarnation. That was God's plan for us to live here and now. So, God and humanity, Father and creation, Christ and the church, Jesus and Mary, bridegroom and bride, priest and people. God has revealed himself as the masculine principle. Now, God is beyond gender. God in his divinity is beyond gender. Gender applies to human beings. Except for Jesus in his humanity, he is male. Truly male. True God and true man. Does this mean that men are a little more divine than women? Because God, no. We are equal in our humanity. Okay? Completely equal in our humanity. Everything that is not God is the feminine principle. Everything that is not God that he created is the feminine principle. Okay, so think of the yin and the yang. Okay? Alright, so it's a marriage. It's a marriage. It's not uneven. It's not unequal. Because it's a marriage, which is equality. Okay. It's just not identical. Now, footnote number 6 in Theology of the Body was a real eye-opener for me. And in it, John Paul II said, you people in the West, because he was kind of East, right? He's Poland, kind of East, a little bit Eastern church going on there. He said, in the West, he says, he didn't say we, he said you have a hard time understanding symbols because you think it's just a symbol. And you can do away with it, it's empty, you can change it. But biblical symbols are not interchangeable. So we don't like this marriage concept. And we might, again, we have very good reasons for not liking the marriage concept or image. But we have to ask ourselves why and work through that because, again, it's beautiful. And it's the best image God has given us. Even if we're not called to marriage, we should look at this and say, oh, that's so beautiful. The guys probably wouldn't say it like that, but like, wow, that is gorgeous. Whoops, what happened there? I gave my parents a plaque that says, marriage was made in heaven, but so is thunder and lightning. They put it in their bathroom. Yeah. So, again, so that gives us something to work with. If I'm rejecting the marriage concept, I rejected that as a radical feminist. I didn't like that stuff. We have to ask ourselves why and work through it. If we undo sexual imagery, we undo the entirety of the Christian faith. Monica Miller, she wrote The Authority of Women in the Catholic Church. Amazing book, amazing woman. She needs to get out of her little tiny college in Livonia, Michigan, okay, and be a speaker.
Can you say that?
Yes. If we undo sexual imagery, we undo the entirety of the Christian faith. Bishop Rob of San Diego said, sexual confusion is theological confusion. Tommy said, if we're in error about creation, we will be in error about God. And vice versa. If you have flaky, bad theology, you're going to be confused about creation. I want to show you our salvation history timeline. Look, how cool is this, right? Salvation history is the history of the body. There's only a few times that human nature has changed. Human nature doesn't change. The essence of something doesn't change. So we're not evolving. Humanity isn't evolving. We're becoming better, higher beings. Really? World War I, World War II? Really? Okay. No, human nature doesn't change. We've always been capable of great good and great evil. That's our choice. So, John Paul II calls this, so why do we have one foot in the new creation? The new heavens and the new earth. Why can we say we have one foot there? I'm not hearing it yet.
Resurrection.
Nope.
Because Christ became man.
Nope. Well, I mean, it's all part of it. But not hearing it. Yes?
That's all we got?
Baptism. Baptism. I'm saying that with a Russian accent. So I had this guy, this tall, big dude, and he dropped his teenage daughter off to one of my TOB courses, and he's like pacing the back and forth. So you come up to the table, and he said, I have this book called You're Teaching My Child What? By Dr. Miriam Grossman. She's a Jewish psychologist from California. She's fighting sex ed in the public schools, and she's also talking about Catholic schools, etc. And she tells you where sex ed comes from. The deep, dark roots of where all this stuff is coming from. It's not coming from parents, it's not coming from educators, it's not coming from the healthcare community. It's coming from sexual perverts, basically. Bottom line, Alfred Kinsey and company. Anyway, fantastic book. So I held that book up and he said, where is book from Dr. Jewish Lady? He says, I am a Russian Jew. And I said, oh, I figured, Kim, you must be still we're a Christian now, right? So I said, oh, did you convert, or did somebody in your family convert? He looks at me. He's looking down at me, right? He goes, baptism! I was like, yes. Right? I converted. I came into the Catholic. Baptism! I'm like, yes, baptism. That's all he said. Right? I'm baptized now. I am a new creation. What does the Bible say? If anyone is baptized, he is a new creation in Christ. Amen. So, we're trying to solve all our problems. So the millennials are leaving the church and they're not coming back. God only knows what Gen Z is going to do. Like they're the next generation. If you're under 18, actually under 19, you're Gen Z. Z. You're a new generation because the cohort's going about 15 years. So, not all young people are millennials. Millennials, the oldest are 36 now. They have their kids. And we're trying to, I read whole articles and they never mention God once. Oh, they want to belong. If we do this and that, they'll come back. They like this, they like that. Coffee, we have a Starbucks. We have a Starbucks in the foyer, in the vestibule, they'll come back. It's like, they already have Starbucks, they already have belonging, they have their friends, they have their, whatever they're doing. God, how about God? How about we need Jesus? Amen?
Amen.
Yeah. So, baptism. So John Paul II calls it original man, the way God originally made. So here's human nature. The only times human nature has ever changed. When we were created, when we fell, when Jesus joined human nature, when he rose from the dead, when he ascended and brought our human nature up to the right hand of God, and then at the final consummation of the world, the new creation, new heavens, new earth, when we will be even more in the image of God. We don't even know what that means, right? We'll be even more in the image of God. So he calls this historical man right here. This didn't last very long, right? We got busy. Didn't take us long to fall, right? But we can't just say we live in a fallen world anymore. We live in a fallen, redeemed world. Remember those hyphens? Hyphens are good. We live in a fallen, redeemed world, and we can take advantage of the redemption. It's not automatic. We need to get baptized and then live our baptism. And get other people baptized, okay? And then eschatological man, meaning in the new age. The right way to talk about the new age. All right, I'm going to let you have a break till 11:45. Thank you. Let us do pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So I like to think of theology of the body as John Paul II, everybody's John Paul II took the jigsaw puzzle of the Catholic faith. So we have all these little pieces all, mashed up in a box, and he dumped it out on the table, put the jigsaw puzzle together, and showed us how this piece of our faith connects to that piece, connects to this, how it's all connected. And then we have this overall beautiful vision of the human person. Okay? So for me, long story, but when Jesus spoke to me from the Blessed Sacrament and I realized, darn, I had to be Catholic because this was his church. Shoot. I started just like, okay, I believe you, Lord, all these truths. But they didn't make any sense to me, and they were all unconnected. This is true, that is true. This is true, I don't know why it's true, I don't understand it. And the more I studied, the less I understood. Like your reasonings and explanations for this make no sense. Until Theology of the Body, which for me was fairly recent. 2006, 2007 is when I discovered Theology of the Body. So quite frankly, the Catholic faith did not make sense to me until that time, until Theology of the Body. That's how important and serious Theology of the Body is. All right. So, So a little more about the human person. We are like a little trinity within ourselves. We have a mind, a will, and a heart with which we reason, choose, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Okay. So, body persons. John Paul II never wants us to think of ourselves without the bodies that we are, and the fact that our souls are not our true self. And there's something called personhood theory. Has anybody heard of that? It sounds good, but it's horrible. Personhood theory. So it comes from philosophers like Peter Singer. And you're like, well, who cares? Who listens to philosophers? Oh, philosophers are listened to because they'll start off with this crazy idea and people will laugh at them for decades, and then suddenly they wind up being published in serious journals. And they influence the bioethicists, who influence the lawmakers, who influence the schools and the courts and everything. So personhood theory says that there can be a human body there, a live human body, but no person. Okay? So this applies to not just abortion and infanticide, but to euthanasia, to disability, mental illness, all kinds of things. So they're saying nobody can deny anymore that it's human, human DNA. This is a new human being inside of the mother. It's got its own stuff, DNA, own footprint, or whatever you want to call it. But it's not a person yet. So it has no rights, because only persons legally have rights. So even after it's born, it's still not a person yet. Well, when does it become a person? They're not sure. Maybe 3 years old? Maybe. And this personhood thing can be taken away from you at any moment. So if you get Alzheimer's or dementia, you're not a person any longer, because this is what persons are: viable, fully viable. What the heck does that mean? I'm not viable. I need you guys. I did not grow the wheat that is in the bread that I eat. Okay? We're all interdependent. So this crazy idea of viability, if you can live on your own. So we want to be very, very careful. Where there's a body, there's a person. And that's why we're hearing very serious talk of infanticide now. It's not a person. Has no rights. That's why Planned Parenthood can sell baby parts. Okay, so body person. And science is really coming under fire too, because science does not support gender ideology, right? So I tell young people, they love science. Everybody loves science. So you can't believe in gender ideology and science at the same time. Pick one. Pick one. So what's happening now, and you know who Jordan Peterson is? Dr. Jordan Peterson. If you don't, you need to know who he is. He's a psychologist. He taught for 6 years at Harvard, He teaches at the he used to teach at the U of T. Now he's on this endless book tour around the world. You can just watch gajillions of hours of YouTubes of Jordan Peterson on a lot of different topics. He's doing theology of the body without knowing it. But we really need this man today, and he's speaking to a lot of intelligent young adults, and they are listening to him. So Jordan Peterson said, "They're coming for you next, biologists." Who's they? Gender activists, right? So what's happening in the world of science, because science doesn't agree with many genders and this and that, there's a reinterpretation of the data. Okay, so they're taking good solid data and reinterpreting it. And there's these new fields of science which Peterson calls they're non-disciplines, basically. So I'm a medical historian, and I know that there have always been many genders, but that was suppressed by the cisgender, heteronormative, binary people, that's male and female. They suppressed that knowledge because they were dominating and oppressing us. So, yeah, it's going to become really, really tricky to know what's good science and what's not good science, what's junk science, agenda science, or the reinterpretation of good science. Okay, so that's where we're living right now. It's going to wind up that the cheese stands alone, and the Catholic Church is going to be the only entity in the world that takes the body seriously as expressing the whole person and as having something to say about our identity. Okay, so get ready, people. There's going to be prison, there's going to be fines, people are going to lose jobs, and we have to be willing to do that. We have to nip this in the bud. It's happening now. And if we're just going to be quiet, because you might lose your job, you know what I'm saying? These are really crazy times. But if we're going to compromise on that, on male and female, what's left, right? So we need to pray about that. Okay. Gallows humor, as I said. Okay. Is God a person? God in three persons, blessed Trinity. We're only persons because God is a person. Yes. Now, we are made in God's image. And so what does that mean? We hear that over and over again. We're made in the image of God. We're all children of God. Well, there's no period after that. That is not a complete sentence. What comes right after that in the Bible? Blank and blank he made them. Male and female, right? So that must explain what being in the image of God means. The sexual difference is the image of God. That's why it's so important. We want to blur that, we're going to blur God. We're going to blur our understanding of God. Anything else is a false identity. And Satan is all about fake IDs. He makes fake IDs. Right? What did he do in the Garden of Eden? You are not the beloved children of God. God is not your good father. He's holding out on you. He doesn't want you to touch that tree because that's the best. That's the good stuff. He doesn't want you to have that. He's pretending. He's lying to you. You call God a liar, basically. So male and female are not biology. They're theology. It's theology. Yeah, it's biology too. We don't want to deny that. But how old is biology, the field of biology? About 500 years maybe. Okay. How old is male and female? Way longer, right? So male and female is a revelation of God. So that's why we need the Bible, because if we were in our times and we're all confused, but they say there's 57 genders. The Bible says no, male and female. This is what God wants us to know about ourselves. It's short and sweet, but there's a lot to unpack. But no one is left out by male and female. So what if you were born intersex? What if you have gender dysphoria? What if you have same-sex attraction? That's a variation on a theme of male or female because there is nothing else. Science does not find any more than two biological genders or sexes. Gender and sex mean the same thing. They're not two separate things. Nobody's left out. Otherwise, God himself, this is the word of God, would be excluding some of his own beloved children. Would he ever do that? No. So the Bible is inclusive. Owning our sex, our sexuality, our gender is a bit of a process, all right? If adults don't interfere with it in a lot of different ways. And today, what we're doing is we're taking some very normal things that happen to children in their process of accepting their gender and learning about their gender and understanding their gender. We are locking children into false identities, labeling them, doing incredibly invasive, Hormones at age 8? Puberty, what? 4 years old? God help us. Okay, this is child abuse. This is abuse of their minds and their bodies. I can't, okay? Do you know that these hormones make that child infertile?
Yes.
Irreversibly infertile, okay? Do you think an 8-year-old child can decide that they never want to be a parent? So some adults are making that choice for that child, right? Okay. And we're not allowed now, it's called conversion therapy, to just talk to the child. It's going to get to the point where, it is at the point where parents can't even talk to the child about that. So if the child is being encouraged to identify as trans by their guidance counselor at school or whoever, or the media that they watch, that child can be removed from the home, right? If you are not a trans-friendly home and you are not encouraging that child to transition. And this is happening. US, Canada, England, right? England is fighting back. God love them. They are tough, man. And the feminists are fighting back in England. They see all the trans men invading women's spaces as just more male domination. They're fighting. They're fighting. Okay. If we're silent today because we're afraid of the LGBTQ plus activists and the laws and stuff, be much more afraid of these young people when they grow up and come after us. They're going to say, why did you let them do this to us? We were just kids. We were just teens. And you were so afraid and you let them mutilate us and made us think that we wanted this and we're doing it to ourselves. I'm much more afraid of them, let me tell you. Okay, so you can see I get very incensed about this. I don't know why God has put this on my heart to just, I feel like I'm fighting for these kids. I want to fight for them. And this thing about suicide, that's the big threat, right? Oh, they'll kill themselves. They'll kill themselves anyway, just so you know. The suicide rate after transitioning is almost as high, okay? So here's some gender stats for you. What percentage of the population is same-sex attracted? I mean, since we've been calculating this, it's stayed the same. 3 to 6%. What about transgender? I don't know if they've polled like the entire world, but I can give you the stats where these come from. Transgender, or let's talk about, because there's about 7 different types of transgender, which we'll talk about, but classic gender dysphoria. I feel like a man trapped in a woman's body or a woman trapped in a man's body. It's real, but it's very rare. What percentage of the population do you think has gender dysphoria? 0.2%. But I was talking to young adults, very smart young adults, about 100 of them. Very Catholic, very fervent, all in university. And I asked them, what percentage of the population do you think is trans? Guess what they said? They said 50%. This is in Canada. Actually, they weren't all from Canada, though. They're from the States, too. And I said 15, and they said no, 50. And they all kind of looked around. They were all in consensus. And, you know, when you work with young people, you hide your shock, right? You know that, right? I started slow clapping. I didn't know what else to do. And they said, what are you doing? And I said, are you saying that because every time you open your phone, there's a new story, there's a celebrity transitioning? And they said, yeah, it's everywhere. And I said, well, the media has done its job. I said, do you know there's a lobby? There's a very powerful, they have a lot of money, a lot of influence and power, and they dictate. They have the talking points for the news, the laws, the education system, the entertainment, etc. And woe to you if you don't follow this. You will be, you know, on the outs. And they said, no, they didn't know that. So media literacy is sorely lacking, right? They believe everything they see on their phone. And they really thought it was everywhere. And I said, do you know any trans people? I think one or two people said, I think I know somebody who might be transitioning. I said, how many people know same-sex attracted people? All the hands went up. I said, so how could there be more trans people than same-sex attracted people if you don't even know any trans people, right? And then I said, do you see how much more radical it is to feel like you're born wrong, born in the wrong body, or just to be attracted to people of the same sex? They couldn't see how that was much more radical. They thought it was kind of all the same. So critical thinking skills are also lacking, right? The ability to think logically, because feelings rule. And then there's intersex. Do you know what intersex is? It used to be called hermaphrodites. So these are people who might have less distinguishable genitalia. It never means 50-50, like I have a set of women's and I have a set of men's. No, it's maybe a little indistinguished. Sometimes there's a phenomenon where women will have testes inside their bodies, or no ovaries, or their bodies do not counter the production of testosterone. There's actually an Olympian, she's from South Africa, she's a runner, and her body just produces so much, women have a little bit of testosterone, produces so much testosterone because she doesn't have the opposite in her body, and she's way faster than all the women, stronger, etc. She has no breasts. So sometimes people are a little bit of both, you know, but never 50-50. They know what they are. They know what they feel themselves to be. And for some strange reason, intersex people think it's the Catholic Church saying that when they're babies, they have to have surgeries. That they have to choose, their parents have to decide something for them. It's like, no, we don't believe in that. Like, let the kid figure it out. The kid basically knows what they are. Okay. 70 to 80% of teens who identify as LGBTQ, if they are not interfered with by adults, by the time they're 22, 23, will identify as heterosexual. So there is a certain amount of gender fluidity, people experimenting, people trying to figure out who I am, people dealing with trauma or whatever influenced them in their lives, working it out, let them work it out. If a child is exhibiting gender dysphoria, or I want to be a girl, I want to be a boy, and I'm not, before puberty, again, the majority, by the time when the hormones kick in, they begin identifying with their biology, if they're not interfered with. And today, they're realizing that all it takes is one or two times hearing the word trans and being told about trans, and they start to like imagine that. You know how kids just, everything is larger than life. They're trying to navigate reality. So they see a horror movie or something, and they're obsessed with monsters. They think there's monsters everywhere. Oh, mommy, is the monster gonna get me, right? Trans, they're thinking that trans is a thing, right? In the sense of it's everywhere, and it's a choice I need to make, and it's a good thing. There was a mom, she had a little boy and a little girl, and she was pregnant with the third, and she said to the kids, what do you want to have, a little boy or a little girl? And the little girl thought, she was about 4 or 5, and she said, I hope it's trans. And she said, I was so proud of my daughter because she was willing to accept a trans child. And it's like, no, that's all wrong-headed thinking, right? Yeah, and there's a lot we could say about that too. All right. Now, you know Jazz? He was born male, still male, been living as a girl for most of his life, I think, supported by his parents. He has his own show on TV. He's about 16 or 17 now. And they want to do the finish up surgeries to turn him into a woman and all that, which can't be done actually. But he has no sensation. They're waiting for him to have sexual sensation, and he doesn't. Guess why? Puberty blocking hormones. He missed that window. He will never have sensation now. So this is a massive experiment. And don't put it past, sorry, doctors and scientists. Some of them really like to find stuff out, and you're not allowed to do human experimentation, so, And Big Pharma. Do not discount Big Pharma in all this. Google it, just Google it. Big Pharma. If they can get people hooked on their drugs for life, and it's going to be for life, right? So there's a lot of people who will benefit from a transgender society, okay? Follow the money, follow the money. Now, and not just these hormones make the child infertile, but all kinds of other things to developing brains, fragile developing bodies, etc. Youth who transition regret it very quickly. So if they transition as teens, in their 20s, they're going to start regretting it. Many of them, a great majority. Just go to YouTube. I tell young people to do this too. Go to YouTube and look up detransitioning youth. Mostly girls, mostly women, and a lot of them are very angry because they say, one of them said, I was recruited by the trans cult. They said, she said, I had trauma as a female. I needed to deal with that as a female, but I thought if I could flee my gender, I could flee my body somehow, I could leave that pain behind. No, it doesn't go behind because it's in your body and your soul that you can never flee your body and your soul. So she's detransitioning, and all of them say this thing, nobody talked to me. I had no counseling. It was just, you feel trans, you are trans, here's where to get the drugs, here's what to do, here's how to transition. And like I said, it's illegal to do what's called conversion therapy. We don't call it conversion therapy, or maybe, I don't know, maybe some fundamentalist Christians called it conversion therapy, where, against a child's will, they went to, I think, it's bad to you send these kids to these camps and you dunk their head in ice water in the morning and tell them you're a girl or a boy or whatever. No. We don't do that, right? Catholics like science. We actually like it. And we go by the latest good psychology and everything. And we have organizations like CourageRC.com, okay, which is an international spiritual support group for same-sex attracted Catholics. And now it's also more and more, trans people are coming and looking for help too. So conversion therapy. So we're not allowed to even talk, and they're not allowed to talk to teens anymore. They used to have a teen track, but it's illegal for Courage. So there's something called Eden's Invitation, which are young people themselves doing it. No one can stop them, for now. We'll make that illegal pretty soon. It's called Eden's Invitation, and it's a place for young Catholics to hang out who are struggling with some issues, gender issues, right? Very solid, very orthodox. They have priests, good priests, and other people helping them. So we're not allowed to talk. What about the young person's rights who says, hey, I'm feeling trans, or have same-sex attraction. I don't really want to feel that way. So I want to see if I can move more toward heterosexuality. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. I don't know, but I just want to see, and I just want to talk to someone. Illegal. That kid's rights. No. You're only allowed to transition, go that direction, right? Okay. And there's a lot of inconsistencies with the gender theories and ideologies. So gender is fluid, or you're born that way. You can't have both. Born that way, or it's fluid, right? Okay. So gender, I always talk to young people, I say, you know what, you don't have to make up a gender. You don't have to work that hard. It's God's gift to you, male or female. And who's getting lost in the shuffle is the people who truly have gender dysphoria, the 0.2% of the population. Their very distinct needs are being overlooked in this sort of trendy trans thing that's going on. Now, does God love us no matter what we're struggling with? Yes. Are we supposed to love as God loves? Yes. So that's not a question. That's off the table. So are Christians haters? Are Catholics haters? We shouldn't be. I'm sure there's plenty. But no, we're not haters. We're trying to love everybody. And we want what's in your best interest, and we don't think this is in your best interest. And not only that, I have a right to my own version of reality, okay? This is what Dr. Jordan Peterson when he first came out, he refused to use pronouns, made up pronouns like sie, zu, sei, them, which could change the next day. And you're not allowed to misgender me. It changed. You have to keep up with my genders, and tomorrow I might be something else. And he said, I am not going to call you they, both. If I see one person sitting in a chair, that does not correspond with my version of reality. I'll call you by your name. You change your name from Victor to Victoria, whatever, that's fine. Like, I'll call you by your name. But I'm not going to do these made-up pronouns. And he went to Parliament and called this compelled speech. He says, I will refrain from certain words. Even that's a little weird, but, and he says, and I don't want to use hateful, hurtful words to people anyway, but you cannot force certain words to come out of my mouth. It's called compelled speech. So that kind of catapulted him to notoriety, and he has been valiant, and people have backed down. People that were ready to tear him limb from limb. I mean, there were these student activists that were like lunging at him, and he has no bodyguard, and he said, learn how to speak. This is what he tells young people, learn how to think. You will be the smartest person in the room, and they will back down. These are bullies, and they will back down. Okay. And he has another saying that I use a lot with parents. You can't always protect people, but you can make them strong. Interiorly strong, right? We can't always protect our kids from porn. We can't protect them from a lot of things. We should try, can do our best. But here's another saying that we use in the media literacy community. Control is for the moment, communication is for a lifetime. Control is for the moment, communication is for a lifetime. So it's getting harder and harder to control our young people's media devices and media use, right? But we can talk to them constantly, right? Okay. And when they're little, absolutely, we have to control it as much as possible because they don't have self-control. They don't have that ability to make good choices. But as they get older, we mete out little by little with all the filters and protections, their media use, we're vigilant about it, etc. But what's more important is the constant communication. And not just preaching at them, but helping them process it so that they own it. The Socratic method, asking them questions. So what do you think about that? Is that good for society? Blah, 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 etc. And then they own it. It's not because mom and dad said so. It's because I believe this. All right, so I tell young people, it's good to be a man. It's good to be a woman. Learn what that means. And I hope that you can get up every morning, as I do now, having overcome, my radical feminism. I rejoice in being a woman, right? It's about living the gift of our sexuality. Okay. And it's not God loves you, but it's God loves you, period. Okay? But do you love yourself? Right? Okay. And what does that really mean to love ourselves and love our bodies? Okay. We have about 7 more minutes. So who owns gender? A gender studies professor? I don't care. I don't care that you're a gender studies professor. Sorry. Who owns gender? Nobody. Everybody. Everybody owns gender because we all have gender, right? Don't be intimidated. I'm just skipping some stuff here. So it's true, the soul may live on without the body, but only the body can express the whole person. How about that? So John Paul II says that male and female is a fundamental component of human existence. We have to have a way to be in the world. And there's only 2 ways, male or female. or intersex would be a variation on that theme, but still leaning toward one or the other. And I always ask young people, wouldn't it be more logical that you were born with your soul matching your body? Wouldn't that be the more logical? Pope Francis said it well. He said, "We accompany, love, accept, and welcome the trans person, those who identify as trans, but not gender ideology." So we can make that difference, right? We do not accept gender ideology, but we love the person always. So where do you think all this gender ideology is going? Okay, I'm in the wrong place. Hang on. Stand by. Where is this? Okay, I think I know where that is. All right, that's over here. Oh, because we're doing something different. Okay. I have a young priest friend in Michigan, and he says he thinks it's going to nihilism, to suicide, really, right? So I met a Croatian young adult at a Theology on Tap, and he says, we don't have all this trans stuff yet in Croatia. He said, so basically what's going on here is it's keeping men and women away from each other so they don't form families and have kids. I'm like, yeah, basically that's what's happening, right? Or it could go another way. It could go to theology of the body. Amen? Amen. And we can help that process. It can go to healing. It can go to understanding. It can go to embracing who we are. We can have a turnaround. So we're now at Gen Z. But if you're under 3 years old, you are another generation. So we have 3 generations now, millennials, Gen Z, and the little guys, they don't have a name because we ran out of letters of the alphabet. So maybe Gen Reboot? Okay. But again, we have a tremendous responsibility. You and I, who grew up in a world without this is all our kids know. And if we're just going to be silent because we're scared, or silent because we're not going to take the time to educate ourselves, or we'll educate ourselves but we won't say it. Everything I'm telling you today, I tell right to the kids themselves. They want to hear it, right? And they argue. Oh man, do they argue, Yeah, you can't unhear it though. You heard it first in the Catholic Church. What you do with it is your business. Okay? And the kids don't sign up right away to it. Some of them do. Some of them are like, they're thinking about it. It's like, okay, so this nun comes into our school. I do hit and runs. And everyone else is saying something completely different. And she comes in and says something else. So either she's nuts, or just maybe what she's saying is right and everybody else is wrong. And we have something called natural law in ourselves. This ability to know right from wrong, to know the truth when we hear it, right? And it gives them pause, right? And they have a right to this information. We used to have a high school book called Your Right to be Informed, a high school religion text. Your Right to be Informed, that was the title of it. People have a right to the truth, especially if you're Catholic. You have a right to this information. Catholic Church has been sitting on theology of the body for like 40 years now, sitting on it. And it's the answer. It's the solution to all these problems. You know that homily that priests always like to, the little joke in the homily, priests always love to tell about the man in the flood, and he's praying to God, and God sends a rowboat, he says, no, God's going to save me. You know that one? Yeah. And he sends a helicopter, his last chance, water up to his neck. No thanks, the Lord's going to save me. He drowns, he goes to heaven. Why didn't you save me, Lord? He's like, I sent you a rowboat, a canoe, helicopter. So the helicopter is TOB. JP2's the pilot. It's our last chance, folks. Last chance, get on the helicopter or don't. Right? So, but again, the more you know about it, the more beautiful it is, right, sister? Sister has her certificate from the Theology of the Body Institute. She did all 8 weeks. She was the first nun to graduate, yes? Woo! You will be convinced down to your toenails. you're gonna like just want to help people so bad with this stuff. It's gonna be like, what was it, Jeremiah? Like it's in a fire inside his bones. You cannot be silent. Okay. So we've got a few more minutes. So you've heard of expired, tired, and wired, or broke, woke, and bespoke. You can do it for anything. You look at trends, and then you say what's going out, what's hot at the moment, and where are we heading, right? So actually, being gay is old hat. That's old news, right? I tease all my friends in Courage, like, you're so boring. Trans is getting tired though, because it's still male or female, right? And we want to get rid of gender. So what's wired is non-binary, gender non-conforming, right? I'm neither, right? So
Is that where gender fluid fits in?
yeah, gender fluid. Sometimes they'll say agender. I'm agender. Okay. So people have been deceived. Let's remember that. We're not fighting with people. Just like in the pro-life movement, we're not fighting people. We're fighting the powers and principalities that have deceived these people, right? And it's a big fight, but it's not impossible because we have this beautiful truth. This old lady came up to me at one of my presentations and said, "Sister, don't you get so discouraged? Look at the way things are, the mess," right? And I said, I would be if I didn't have theology of the body. But all it is letting it out of its cage, letting it get out there, right? Okay, we should probably wrap up for now. Any questions or comments? Okay, let's have lunch. Good food, good meat, good God, let's eat. Teachers and principals and superintendents and the trans kids are transferring to the Catholic schools because they feel safer. But we're haters, right? How is that possible? I thought the Catholics were the haters. So I ask young people, why do you think, I tell them that, and I say, why do you think these trans kids are transferring to the Catholic schools? Why do they feel safer? Well, the answer is, we don't just not bully people because it's a policy. It's a school policy that we don't bully. And there's going to be consequences. We don't bully about anything because our God tells us to love everybody. And we see Christ in you. So it's way deeper than just a policy. All right? So I asked these teachers, I said, who were, dealing with these trans young people, and I like to put things in quotes too, because language matters, right? If we cave into language, it changes everything. It changes the meaning of things, right? So Dr. Jordan Peterson said, "I suppose you're wondering why I've chosen to die on the hill of pronouns." But it matters, right? It really, really matters. So my friends in Courage, the same-sex attracted spiritual support group for Catholics, I had to be schooled. Like, I had to learn a lot of this stuff because I didn't quite understand it all. And I said, what's so wrong about saying gay or whatever? And they're like, no, it's a label. Every time I heard gay before, when I was in identifying myself that way, it just kept reinforcing this identity, this false identity, that this is who I am. This sexual inclination is everything for me, and this is who I am, and it colors everything in my life. So I asked these Alberta teachers, actually a principal and a superintendent separately, I asked them, so I know all the different types of trans, I've read a lot of studies. I said, what do you think is going on besides all these things that we know? What's going on? Why? They said the exact same thing, separate from each other. And it was just a gut reaction. It wasn't a talking point, something they had talked about. What do you think they said? What they put their finger on as what's happening in these young people's lives? What? Definitely, the media and internet and everything is feeding into this. But that's not what they said, and it wasn't what I expected. No, so not DNA. So the idea that this is environmental influences, because we have very toxic environment, right? We do know, for example, that the estrogen that women pee out from the pill, estrogen does not break down in the water supply. So the pill is like synthetic estrogen. So men are drinking that. We're swimming in a sea of estrogen, which feminizes men, and it's precancerous for women. Too much estrogen for women is precancerous. And pesticides are bad for men, and plastics are bad for men, because they all have something that mocks estrogen, and men, it gets into men's bodies and it feminizes them. So, but to say that trans is something environmental or whatever, we do not have that science. We do not have, there's no proof. We can't just sort of conjecture something and then say, oh, it's probably DNA. It's probably, some scientific something. Which it might be in part, right? Like somebody said, here's something, and this is again it's not necessarily a thing. But, so you heard about the vaccines that have aborted babies in them? You've heard about this, right? So isn't that kind of like mad cow disease? Feeding cows to cows? So, and what if female stuff is going into a male body? Female DNA going into a male baby's body. Like, I don't know. That's just something that popped up online recently, and it's a path I need to do more research on. But again, we can't say for sure, because it's much more of a psychological thing that's happening, right? This is what this principal and superintendent told me. They said, these young people have no significant relationships with adults. And they're living with their families, often with their biological parents, their mom and their dad. But there's no family life. It's a hotel. Everybody's coming and going, love you, bye, get the casseroles in the oven. No family meals together. No family. This is not okay, Catholics. And I know you're doing it because the kids snitch on you. They tell me. So about 10 years ago, they used to say, well, we have one family meal together, like on Sunday or Saturday. Then it turned into no family meals ever, hardly, unless you go out to eat at a restaurant or something. I mean, it's not that sometimes people cook, but we don't sit down and have a family meal together. Or maybe it's one or two members of the family, but not everybody. This is not okay. The family is the domestic church. I'm preaching now, huh? This is not to lay guilt trips, but again, if we have to, and I know life is crazy, but we have to make some priorities. We have to. So I know a Catholic radio announcer, and he said, I was in that situation. My wife and I worked. Our kids were going in a bajillion different directions with work after school and sports and musical instruments and all kinds of things. But we decided this was a priority for us. So one day of the week it would be 4 p.m. where we were all home. So we had supper at 4 p.m. Another night of the week it was 9 p.m. when everybody was, but we did it. He said, and it kept us together as a family. Now his kids are grown. So there's ways and there's ways. No significant relationships with adults. So all their input came from the media and their peers. And the parents don't parent. I'm your friend. I want to be the cool parent, and a cool parent never says no. So you raise yourself. Now I just heard Dr. Ray Guarendi. You know him? He's so awesome, right? That guy gets funnier with age. So he was speaking at the Dynamic Women of Faith in Toronto, and also Vicki Thorne. Do you know who she is? She founded Project Rachel for post-abortion healing, and she's a psychologist. And she was talking about, and Dr. Ray Guarendi, who's also a psychologist, said, we destroyed you. It's the shrinks that destroyed parenting. He said, we told you through the years, do this, no, do the opposite. You're just a mom. You don't know anything. You have to listen to the experts. You know, and she said at one point, Vicki was saying at one point in history, the strong-willed child. Oh, I have a strong-willed child. We're all strong-willed. We all want our way. Hello. Everybody's strong-willed. He says, you know whose will is stronger? My wife's. Right? So he has 10 kids, all adopted, multi-race, all different races, right? Funny guy. He said, when I'm out with my wife and the 10 kids, he goes, I can read everybody's mind because I'm a psychologist. He said, I know what everybody's thinking. And there's these 10 kids, all different races, and the white parents. And he goes, the people are thinking, does he know they're not all his? Right? So anyway, he said, we took your confidence away, parents. You think you don't know what to do. Just follow your instincts. Just make it up. Like our parents did, right? They didn't know how to be parents. Just make it up as you go along, right? You just repeat the same stuff your parents did to you. You know, polish it up, change it around a little bit. Okay, so these poor kids, I see that, right? So at one point, the psychologist told the parents, put the kids in charge. They know how to raise themselves. They have the wisdom within. You know? So I've often wondered, you know, of course, people who don't have kids know how to raise children, right? But, you know, I'm sorry, but we know this. Those of us who are not parents, we know these things. And like the 2-year-old is in charge of what they're having for supper. The 8-year-old chooses where they go on vacation. All this. So how do you think this person, like as an adult, like anyway, is going to learn how to, if they've always been in charge, to learn to not be in charge, and sometimes other people are in charge. Anyway, so Dr. Ray Gorendy is very much for parenting. That's it, parenting, just parent, you know. So these poor kids, they're not parented, so they don't know whether they're coming or going. They don't know what's up or down, right or wrong, and they're in pain. Our young people are hurting so much, right? I say this to other young people, I say, young people are hurting, aren't they? They're like, yeah. Sometimes they're thinking about themselves, sometimes they're thinking about their friends. I'm like, we gotta help young people, right? Somebody just came up and shared with me that she finds young people today, even though they come from divorced families, blended families, whatever, they expect the church. They don't like divorce because they've suffered from it, right? So they expect the church to hold the line. They want the church to say no divorce. And again, this is not judgmental. This is just nobody goes to the altar planning their divorce, right? In about 5-10 years, we're going to break up. It's like, no. Nobody's perfect, right? Nobody's being judged. But God has this awesome plan for us. And this is how things work better. And science backs us up. Even sociology, right? The sociological science backs things up about what's good for relationships, etc. So we're not judging or saying, like, shaming anybody by saying, this is God's plan. And you know what? Life is a mess. It's messy. And we don't always get it right. But we know what's better for ourselves. We know what we would have preferred, right? And we can work toward that in our own lives. And we're going to fall short too. None of us is perfect, right? The kids aren't perfect. Nobody's perfect. But here's what we want. So if you think, for example, you had a bad father, how do you know what a bad father is? You have an idea of a good father, and you're comparing. Even if you never saw it, you have an idea in your mind of what your father should have been. So we tell kids, God is your good father, ultimately, right? He's the father you always wanted. Unconditional love, kind, challenging you at the same time, spending time with you, being there for you, etc. So the answer is not to water everything down. And when I was growing up, the faith was already so watered down, it was like, I wasn't even walking away from anything. I was planning to leave the church. Then God zapped me. But, it's like, what am I walking away from? Nothing. This vanilla beige, bleh, So I'll give you a quick story. I was talking to a group of life teens. They had all come together in Toronto to hear me, a few life teens, on Theology of the Body. So afterwards, it was a freezing cold night, this kid named Ryan comes up to me. He's about 15, 16, smart kid, whip smart, and he starts pummeling me with questions, one after the other. And he wants to know about conception, what happens at conception, and evolution, and this and that. And as soon as he knew I could answer his question, he would cut me off and start the next question. And we're standing there for an hour. It's like now it's 10:30 p.m. and his youth group's coming over and come on, we have to go. Or like, because they were driving. But I looked at the youth ministers and they weren't budging. I think they wanted him to talk to me, right? So I was like, okay, so when the youth minister comes over, we'll move. But until that time. So towards the end, and I'm praying, Lord, please, because it's never a matter of the head. It's usually a matter of the heart, right? There's something else going on. Like, what was this kid's experience? What's really going on in his life? What's underlying all of this? I mean, not that we don't make intellectual journeys to the faith. We do. And that's good. But I knew there was something else going on. I'm like, please, Lord, please tell me what his thing is. Please let me help him. So he said, I have one more question for you. Okay. If a mother's giving birth and she's dying and the baby's dying, who do you save? And he said, no, what does the Catholic Church teach that you're supposed to do? And I said, they're both of equal value. They're both human. You don't pit rights of one against the other. You try to save them both. He goes, but no, what if you have to save one or the other? I said, well, in a first world country today, there's almost zero reasons that you have to choose. I said, but if you do have to choose, I said, again, the church will never say, choose the baby or choose the mother. It's not going to say that. You just try your best to save them both. I said, but the heroic thing to do would be to let the baby live, like give the kid a chance, right? And I said, and most moms, if they're still conscious, are going, save my baby! Forget about me, right? Save my baby. That's what moms do. And I said, like St. Jana, right? St. Jana Mola, that's what she did. And he said to me, I was that baby. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, my mom and I were dying when I was being born. He said, and my dad said, save my mom. And he said, and I was an accident. And he put his head down. I'm gonna cry. It's like, I looked at him, I said, Ryan, there's no such thing as an accident. Your parents had sex. Said sex equals babies. I said there's no such thing as an oops baby, a miracle baby, a surprise baby, or an accident baby. And he got this big smile. He was so tense. And he got this big smile for the first time, got a big hug. I got 2 hugs actually, we were both kind of crying. And I said, Ryan, I don't know why your parents said that to you, that's horrible. I think it was his dad, he hates his dad, right? So I said, I don't know why they said that. Maybe it was a moment of weakness or something, but you know that God is your good father. You're here because he wants you here. It actually doesn't matter. It's sad, but it doesn't matter what your parents think. It doesn't matter if they wanted you, if they care about you, and for sure they do love you and care about you. I said, but did your mom die? He goes, oh no, we both lived. And he said, and my mom said, save me. He said, my mom said to the doctor to save me. So he loves his mom, hates his dad. And I'm like, Ryan, so he was he was being an atheist too, like, those atheists that go to youth group? And I'm like, God is the creator over all, so he's and that idea of like conception. And so if I had watered down church teaching, because I actually thought he was asking because he wanted me to say to save the life of the mother. I thought that's why he was asking. Like, that's ridiculous. What's this little person? Nobody doesn't even have a name yet. Actually, quick story. I went to Mount St. Joseph Academy in Brighton, Sisters of St. Joseph, and Sister Ernestina, and I was with all these tough girls from Southie and Dorchester and Charlestown and stuff. These tough Irish girls, right? And I was very pro-life. I was crazy about everything else, like my radical feminism. I was for everything wrong. I got everything wrong except abortion. I knew that was the taking of a life. I got that. And I was pro-life, but I didn't know if any of the other girls were. We didn't talk about it. So one day, Sister Ernestina proposed us this scenario. She said, whose life do we save? And I said, the mother's. And all the girls turned to me and went, "The baby!" And I was like, whoa, like I guess they're pro-life and I'm not. And I said, but she has, and the scenario was she has other children, but there was a dad on the scene and stuff. And I said, but she has a life. She's somebody. The baby is just, she can have other children, la la la. And they're like, give the kid a chance. It's like, okay, like, that's the point. The kid doesn't have a life yet. She had her life. And there's a dad, like, somebody will take care of the baby, right? Whatever. So anyway, I was schooled by those girls. Okay. All right. And Sister Ernestina didn't have to say a word. She was just smugly smiling, very proudly. The girls teaching me that. Okay. So, sex and gender. We are told today that these are two separate things. And they never the twain shall meet. We are told, and you've heard this, and a 6-year-old can spout sophisticated gender ideology to you, right? They will tell you sex is your biology. It's your body. It's what some doctor assigned you when you were born. They looked at your body and assigned you a sex. But your gender is what you feel you are, and that's your true self. Your soul, your spirit is your true self. This can keep changing, etc., etc. Feelings, nothing more but feelings. Okay. But this is false. Sex and gender are the same thing. We're one person, body and soul. If you have a male body, that's your first clue that you have a male soul. Souls are gendered. Souls are gendered. Now, this is so interesting. Some of you have lived this, some of you didn't. In the 1990s, the narrative, which was controlled by the radical feminists, was that souls were not gendered. There was one generic way to be a human being, and the body didn't really matter. There was a few reproductive body parts that were different in men and women, but apart from that, the body's very similar. No, it's not. We have the science today that even the body parts of women, like eyes and muscles and bones, are very different from men's eyes and hearts and muscles and bones. They used to do like sports science just on men, and then they realized women have heart attacks differently from men. We have concussions and heal from concussions different from men. There's a female brain, there's a male brain. We have different needs for iron. Why is there a men's health magazine? It's not all about sex. It's about the different health needs of men from women. So again, radical feminism obliterates the feminine, and we adopt as the one human generic paradigm the male paradigm. So, yeah. Radical feminism is anti-woman, actually. So, but then with the trans people restored the fact that souls are gendered, right? In the wrong way. But they said, no, there's a male soul and a female soul. And here's how John Paul II explains it. In many ways, in Theology of the Body. He talks about femininity and masculinity being inscribed in the interior. And he says it's first of all inscribed in the interior. Oh yeah, and the body too. So again, the body is expressing the soul. The body is the sacrament of the soul. Because it does what a sacrament does. It makes the invisible visible. And he calls it suprasensual. He made up a lot of words. Hyphens and a lot of made up words. Okay. The suprasensual beauty of masculinity and femininity. That means apart from the body, in a sense. Like, not just the physicality of the body of the person, but the spiritual part of the person. So gender used to be grammar only. You just had to make verbs and things agree and personal pronouns agree, and now it's taken on a life of its own. A young man in a Catholic high school in Toronto almost failed his health test. He got a D- because he said there were two genders, and that was the wrong answer. And this is what he told his mom. He said, "This is not scientific. My friends and I don't believe in this stuff. And he almost failed his exam because after that question, it went on to, if you accepted that, if you accepted the split of sex and gender, then it was all downhill, right? The rest of the questions were about that. And he said, we don't believe in this stuff, and we feel like it's being forced on us, and we're being forced to conform. He called it, we're being forced to be in alignment with something we don't agree with and we don't believe in. So again, where's this kid's rights, right? So remember this. If you don't remember anything else, again, that we are our bodies, remember that you, as soon as you agree, for whatever reason, to split sex and gender, it's all over. You have given away the farm. It's all downhill because you have split body and soul. And of course, something unseen, something doing with feelings and imaginations and whatnot, can be anything. Can be anything. I might have an owl soul. I have an owl soul in my human body. It doesn't have to be limited to humans. That's speciesism. That's the next thing coming down the pike too, folks. Anyone see The Shape of Water? Won Best Picture last year? Yeah. That was about speciesism. How dare human beings say they are different and more special than any other species. Okay. So gender confusion, gender dysphoria is real, but it's a psychoaffective disorder that needs treatment, counseling, and therapy. So Christopher West has this great new little book called Eclipse of the Body. How we lost the meaning of sex, gender, marriage, and family, and how to reclaim it. Where did it all come from? Well, a lot of places. It's a profound philosophical movement, but profound in a bad way, like not good profound. And it was bubbling in academia in the 80s and 90s, quietly, and all of a sudden it burst through, fully formed. And also activism. So this is a planned global movement. This is a globalist movement to infiltrate absolutely everywhere and indoctrinate your children. They know that society can change like that if we can get it to the kids. Okay? Because then they, yeah. So the book, the last word on transgenderism is When Harry Became Sally. Okay. It sounds like a snarky title, but it's not meant to be. It's really, where did this all come from? It has all the different components, the sociology, the health, the where it's going, what to do about it, etc. If you want the science and the studies and the statistics, it's all in there. This is an invaluable book. This book is just really practical, down to earth, Loving My LGBT Neighbor, Being Friends in Grace and Truth by Glenn Stanton, who works for Focus on the Family. He's Catholic. He does a lot of their research. And I first saw him at Focus on the National Forum on Theology of the Body, where he had, I'm not sure if he's a revert or what, but he was evangelical at the time. And he held up Theology of the Body, and he said to us, "This is a gateway drug." He said, "I've started reading encyclicals." He said, and he was on the verge of becoming Catholic. I think he was just trying to bring his wife along or something. So now he's Catholic, and this book is so good. So it's like, seriously, how do we really be friends? Be friends with our neighbors and our colleagues, or what if it's our own kids who are same-sex attracted or whatever? How can we not compromise on the truth, but at the same time live well together, right? And you'd say, well, that's easy. Well, no, it's not necessarily. And I know some of us can think of scenarios where it was difficult. Weddings, same-sex weddings. Can a Catholic attend? No, because you're not just a guest at a wedding, you are a witness. You're witnessing to the truth of this union, right? And so I used to say, well, I wouldn't go, but I would go to the reception. And a priest told me, you can't go to the reception because it's the wedding feast. It's all one thing. It's like, oh, okay. So, but again, there's ways and there's ways. So is it a one-way street where I have to do everything my friend wants me to do or whatever? Or is this a two-way street where they respect me too? And it's tough because this is the most important day in their lives. This means a lot to them, right? But it's really, and he really is friends because he goes on campuses and he debates and he gives talks and, I mean, secular campuses and stuff. So for example, here's an example. What if you have a lesbian couple in your parish? They're Catholic. They're both baptized Catholics. They have kids. They want to. They're welcome to come to church, right? This is on the pastor. The pastor has to figure out their situation or whatever. That's not on us, right? But now we have lay people in pastoral ministry. So it's like, okay. So they come. They want to volunteer. Okay, they want to be lectors. Okay. Now they want to teach catechism. Okay. Now what? Eucharistic ministers, right? So, okay. Now we don't know what goes on behind closed doors, right? It's none of our business. But it's the pastor's business in a sense, right? So, and the thing is, yeah, so it brings up a lot of thorny questions, right? What do we do? And there's answers, right? So he's got a lot of great answers for that. Okay. But I'll tell you, it's not just a Catholic problem. So, real quick, just see what time we're going to stop. We're going to go till 2:15. So there was a little town in Illinois, I think it's called Oak Park, yes. Very, very liberal town. And the public school, these two lesbian moms brought their little girl to kindergarten. And of course the little kids see two mommies, right? And they start asking their teacher about how come so-and-so has two mommies. And she said, oh, well, it's marriage is also for women and men and men. And when two women love each other very much, well, these lesbian moms got really, really angry. How dare you explain our life to these children? It's like, well, they asked. We weren't, they asked, you say nothing about our life. And it became this big hullabaloo in this little town where everybody had been friends. And this has nothing to do with religion, okay? This was just... So the icon, now you could have heteros who are living together, right? Not married and whatever, in the same boat wanting to teach catechism or whatever. Or divorced and remarried without an annulment, right? But the iconography is not off. Does that make sense? The image of God is not off in the sense of two mommies or two daddies or two wives, two husbands, right? And so that can't be rectified in the sense of a true marriage, whereas something could be rectified if it's male and female, right? Unless they live as companions only with no sexual activity. But even then, to call each other wife, they're not wives, right? They're not husbands. They're partners, right? Again, this is a whole nother topic that's huge, and we're not going to go there. But but this book really helps. Okay. And if you go to my blog right now, hellburns.com, it's my name. And you scroll down, you can subscribe to my blog via email as well. I put a lot of the latest videos on theology of the body, really helpful books, resources, etc., as they come up. And there's this brave British educator, this wonderful woman there speaking on video. She is an inclusion specialist. So her job all her life as an educator has been to include kids who feel ostracized, disabled kids, autistic kids, and now trans kids, etc. But she does not agree with what is she believes is child abuse and everything, this sort of not even sorting out what's going on in a child's life and just making them transition. And she says, I don't care, you can have my career. I will not go along with you. The Brits are fighting, man. They are awesome. And she's also working with the detransitioning youth. So she sees what havoc has been wreaked in these young lives. She's beautiful. She says a lot in a very little amount of time. It's very important to watch her thing. One thing, I don't go this far and agree with this, but the one thing I hope we'll get to today is the fact that there's not just one way to be a man. There's not just one way to be a woman. So we don't want stereotypes. That's not what we're talking about. And hopefully we'll get to that. If I don't say, sister, stereotypes, okay. You don't have to put that voice on, but okay. And then bestforchildren.org is the ACP, the Academy of the American College of Pediatricians. Have you heard of it, the ACP? Now, there's the APA, that's the old traditional one. But they're doing so many things that a lot of pediatricians feel are very harmful to children. Not all, even gender stuff, other stuff too, that they have broken off and created their own, called the American College of Pediatricians. It was formed by Dr. Michelle Cretella, another very brave woman. It has been labeled a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is itself a hate group.
That's a badge of honor. Woo. They don't like you.
Right. So these are real pediatricians. Okay, these are actual board-certified pediatricians who have their own group. Go to bestforchildren.org. They want to talk to parents. I mean, I think they're breaking the conversion therapy laws. I don't know. You can edit that out. I shouldn't have said that. But they are talking to parents, at least, about trying to get your child help if your child really is experiencing true gender dysphoria, etc. Seriously, edit that out. Is this live streamed? Shoot. No, good. Okay. Sorry. I misspoke. All right. So let me just talk a little bit about the different kinds of trans so that you understand a little better. Where did I get this stuff? Partly from Johns Hopkins University, who has been doing a lot through the years with trans people with gender dysphoria. And a lot of places have stopped doing the transitioning surgeries, etc., because it has not helped the person. It has not helped their depression. People with gender dysphoria, when you think about what a serious disorder and confusion that is, there's many other attendant psychological issues with these people, and transitioning does not help those other issues. Also, doctors don't collude with delusions, right? That's not what a psychologist does, or a doctor, right? Do not collude with the delusion, unless you're institutionalized, right? Then it's like, you're Theodore Roosevelt, good morning, General, you will, but otherwise, doctors try to help people live in reality. Whether you have a physical ailment that you might be in denial about or not treating properly, or a psychological issue or emotional issue that you're not dealing with properly. It's to help us live in reality as much as possible. So there's even, like in Europe, they've stopped doing some of the transition surgeries. There's plastic surgeons in California that have stopped doing the transition surgeries. Okay. So the different forms of trans. The three main ones are just that, what I called classic gender dysphoria, where you feel like a man trapped in a woman's body, or vice versa. We have a whole book on it, like what is the clinical understanding of how that works, etc. It used to be called sexual dysphoria, but now everything's gender, right? So the second type of transgender is extreme male homosexuality. The man does not want to be with another gay guy. He wants to be with a straight man. But no straight man wants to be with a gay guy, so he has to transition and pass as a woman. Okay? Did you follow that? Extreme male homosexuality, where a man does not want to be with another gay guy. He wants to be with a straight man. But no straight man wants to be with a gay guy, he wants to be with a woman. So if he can transition and pass, but he has to pass. If he knows he can't pass as a woman, he won't do it. And some of these guys are beautiful. Have you seen Gigi Gorgeous? He is gorgeous, right? And then the third one is a fetish, autogynephilia. So a man gets turned on seeing himself dressed as a woman, acting as a woman, but he's still attracted to women. So if he transitions or lives as a woman, or temporarily, like transvestites used to dress up at certain times, but not all the time, right? And still do. But if he wants to kind of transition and live more as a woman, he'll call himself a lesbian because he's still attracted to women. Okay. Now some of the other things are, it's trendy. It's trendy, right? Young people also like to rebel. What's the ultimate rebellion? Right? Right? To tick your parents off, right? It's also tribal. It's a belonging. If I become trans, I can belong. We have our own flag. I can belong. So how many autistic kids now are saying that they're trans? There's this huge percentage. Because they can belong now. They can be with the cool kids. Because autistic isn't cool, but trans is. So they're shaving their heads, dyeing their hair rainbow colors. There's no autistic flag flying at the schools, but there's LGBT flags, right? So I have a friend who works with the deaf in Vancouver. They're young adults, deaf people. And she said the trans people actually came to them and befriended them and told them they were trans. You can, to enlarge their numbers, you can join us. And so she said, and they did. So all her deaf people now think they're trans. And she said, you should see how badly people treat deaf people in public. It's kind of an examination of conscience. She said, everyone feels bad for blind people. They have the white stick and they're like, and you think, oh my gosh, thank God I'm not blind, and you help them. But deaf people, they can see, they just can't hear. So they come up for help at the counter and maybe they told them very hard to understand them, and then people get really impatient with them. Or they say, hey, can you move it please? Move it, move. They can't hear you, right? So she said she felt really bad for them. They really are ostracized. And I felt that too, like, gosh, am I impatient with people? I'm not a very patient person, like, oh my gosh. So now they feel like they're somebody because they belong to the trans community. Okay. And then it's a manufactured, talk about social constructions, right? This is a social construction. And if we play with things, right? People say, oh, you're born that way. Maybe you've experienced certain things from very young. But if we are also sexually adventurous, and we try this, that, and the other thing, we may find that we kind of like this, that, and the other thing, right? That's how people flip into child porn. You don't have to be a pedophile to watch child porn. Porn, the nature of internet porn is that it just burns out all your synapses, your pleasure center. It creates a superhighway down the pleasure center of your brain, and you need bigger thrills. It just doesn't work anymore. You're worn out. So you have to get harder and harder porn, kinkier and kinkier porn, and then something transgressive. And the part of the thrill is that it's transgressive. You're crossing a line that you never thought you would. So things like that. Like, don't buy this like we are born this way and we can never change. Some things yes, some things no, some things partially, right? So, the wolf you feed. The wolf you feed, right? So a lot of things like guys who got into child porn, fathers of families, never dreamt they would do something like that. But the regular porn wasn't working no more. And they didn't understand the nature of internet porn. That's what it does. And so they said, well, what's this child porn stuff? How does that even work? I'll just take one look at this picture of this kid. Oh, actually, I did get a reaction there. Oh, maybe there's something else. And before they know it, there's an FBI agent on the other side, and there they go. Okay. There's also this thing called ROGD, Rapid Onset Gender Dysphoria. Have you heard of that? So, real gender dysphoria is manifesting. By real, I mean classic, right? So is manifesting all along either before puberty or after puberty, but it's not like, boom, night and day. Boom, suddenly I have gender dysphoria. And this is what's happening now with our young people. It's a phenomenon, mostly girls. 80% of those presenting themselves at gender clinics are females, young females. So a woman did a study at Brown University in Rhode Island, and she was castigated just for taking on this study. She said, but it's a fact. 80% presenting themselves at gender clinics are young women. You can't study that. There's no such thing as ROGD, because it's all real and true, and they're really trans. It's like that's not how these things work, right? So there's social contagion, especially among girls. You've heard of that, right? They all faint together. Remember that fainting spells thing? It happened in New Jersey, whatever. Young people in general do social contagion, but girls especially, okay? So it's interesting. They all were transitioning together. Her friend said, I'm trans, so I'm trans, and then they're all trans. And okay. Right, so there's lots of avenues where this is coming from. And here's something really scary. So this gender ideology is brand new. This is what I tell young people all the time. You're going to go to a dictionary and look up marriage. You're going to go to a dictionary and look up these different words. Some of them are brand new words. It just happened. It's the only world you've ever known, but it just happened. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Phones. We weren't born with phones. You know, the appendage just happened, right? We have choices about all this stuff. We don't have to just go with the flow. When I tell them even a dead salmon can go with the flow, they think that's hilarious for some reason. Okay. Okay. Judith Butler. Have you ever heard of her? Anyone heard of Judith Butler? Okay. So often the people who have changed history, we don't even know their names, right? They're hidden. They're behind the scenes people. Judith Butler is probably the premier gender ideologist. Not that old. She's about my age. Definitely not old. She was working in academia mightily in the 90s, and she has just been named to the head of the MLA, the Modern Language Association, which is one of those higher education organizations, but it's the most influential. There's plenty of higher education organizations and they don't do anything. Nobody listens to them. The MLA, very, very influential. So this woman now is in charge of language, the English language. Wow, right? So again, be very careful. Don't let people call you cisgender. Say, no, thank you. I don't want to be identified that way. I'm a woman, thank you. I'm a man, don't call me cisgender. One of our sisters going to a Catholic college in Boston had to put on a sign and identify how she wanted to be, her gender, not her name, her gender, how she wanted to be addressed. I wouldn't have done it. Sorry. I'm in this fight. I wouldn't have done it. I would have refused to do it. Okay. That was trans. All right. Where are we? God bless you. So our young people desperately need the good news of theology of the body. Theology of the body is the new evangelization. It is the new catechesis. You didn't know there was a new catechesis too, did you? I made that up too. I make stuff up. Okay. What better way? Ireland's gone, right? Gone. The faith is gone. There's little pockets. There's always little pockets. I'm Irish and French Canadian, so I can say that. Ireland's gone, right? When you think of a Catholic country today, what do you think of? I can't think of Ireland anymore. Poland? Philippines. Maybe some Latin American countries too. Maybe like Luxembourg or some little, one of those little countries. So what if we took theology of the body? I know Christopher West goes to Ireland. A brand new way to talk about the faith that takes creation seriously, because the Celts are all about nature, religions, right, and stuff. back to nature stuff. What if we see, theology of the body takes creation seriously. It doesn't just pay lip service to creation. God made it, be a good steward, the end. But do what you want, basically. Just recycle. No, this is saying creation is sacred. Our bodies are sacred. They're revelations of God. God is speaking to us through all this stuff, and we better darn well be careful how we treat it. And see the beauty, see God in it, see the beauty in it. Not just, oh, what a nice sunset, so inspirational. No, it's way beyond that, like way beyond that. Okay. So we had this tremendous opportunity today to preach the gospel in a new way for our times, in a way that people will listen. Trust me, when I start talking about sex, everybody listens, right? Nobody's not interested in this topic. It's where we all live, okay? Remember, love, body, sex, beauty, relationships. Everybody's interested in that. So theology of the body isn't do this, don't do that. It's not a bunch of rules. It's this is who you are. This is your true identity. Now go forth and live it. A 14-year-old girl said, who had been living as a boy since she was 11, said, it's not conversion therapy to learn to love my body. Learn, right? It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. To learn to love my body. Isn't that beautiful? And as George MacDonald said, who was a myth maker like C.S. Lewis, but he preceded C.S. Lewis, but C.S. Lewis drew a lot from him and really admired him. I love this. He says, I would rather be what God chose to make me than the most glorious creature that I could think of. For to have been thought about, born in God's thought, and then made by God is the dearest, grandest, and most precious thing in all thinking. Isn't that beautiful? So it's God. We can't do this apart from God. Anyone seen The Shack? Okay, so I know there's some controversy about it, but I don't think it's meant to say that God is a woman and all that stuff. Let me see if I can find The Shack. I think it's here, yeah. Okay. So what I love about the book, I read the book first. I think you should read the book first because you create your own imagination. Then see the film, but I think the film is really well done. And it's really all about we can't face our own suffering, our own pain, except, or the problem of evil, except in relationship to God, right? It's all about that relationship that we have with God. And of course, there's always. Okay. So thank you. We'll take a break till, oh wait, we have 5 more minutes. Let's not. No, let's take a break, all right? Be back at 2:25. Fill the hearts of your faithful and kindle in them the fire of your love. Send forth your spirit, and they shall be created, and you shall renew the face of the earth. Amen. Okay, we're just going to go straight till 3:30, okay? If you have to leave, I know some people have to leave, just go ahead and leave. I won't be offended. Even if I did offend you, Father Grishel said those who yell at you today may pray with you tomorrow, so. Just debating what we need to cover and what we can cover. So let's talk real quickly about stereotypes. Is this the ideal feminine? All women should aspire to look like Jessica Rabbit. Now, I purposely put cartoons and not real people because some people might look like that and we don't want to make fun of them, and there's nothing wrong with that. But does being feminine mean being sweet, delicate, and frou-frou? No. Femininity is fine. To talk about femininity and being feminine, it's everything that naturally goes with being a woman, body and soul. It's going to look different on different women. not just one way to be a woman. And this British educator on my blog, if you watch her video, she says, this is what we have to do, is like help young people see that there's not just one way to be a woman or a man. You're not more feminine if you look like that. And there's no spectrum of sexuality. We don't want to talk about that. Okay, there's not a spectrum of sexuality. There's male and female, but there's different ways to be male and female. It's incarnated in each one of us in a unique way. Is that what it means to be a man? Macho, rugged, and tough. No. It's whatever goes naturally with being a man. Body and soul is going to look different on different men. So we don't want to fall into stereotypes, caricatures, or even glass ceilings. Can a woman be a firefighter? Yes, if she can lift an adult male out of a burning building. So should we lower standards or change standards so somebody can live their dream? Or is it about safety first? Right. Can a man be a preschool teacher? Sure. If he understands child development, if he's good with kids, if he has a nurturing spirit.
And he's not big, deaf, and scary.
So, again, we're not talking about glass, but we are also, by the design of our bodies, outfitted for one thing or another, and our gendered souls, right? We are just naturally better at certain things. Most women do not want to be firefighters. Most women do not even want to be construction workers or whatever. But if a woman is a good engineer, should she be allowed to do that? Sure. Okay. So I hope that's clear. I was talking with this young lady and she wanted to be a cop and she couldn't understand. She thought she was going to be exactly like a male cop. And I kept telling her, no, you have feminine gifts that you're going to bring to the job that a male cop doesn't have. And he has things that he brings to the job that you don't have as a woman. I said, you're not going to be Telly Savalas, you're going to be Angie Dickinson. But alas, she did not know who Telly Savalas or Angie Dickinson was. I knew she didn't know. Anyway, there was Alaska State Troopers. I love real TV, real life shows. Reality TV is fake, right? So reality TV is like Big Brother, Survivor, where they create these fake situations. Real life TV is where they job shadow. So there was this one little gal, her name was Anne, I think. She was an Alaska State Trooper, and she was native. So she could speak the native language in all the villages, but she was a tiny little thing. So she basically went around with a man, a male cop, male state trooper, and but it was great because she could calm people down, you know, and she could talk the language, and the men would look at her as like their sister or their mom. But some big drunken guys come charging at her. The two men cops jumped on him and took him down, right? Like she was kind of useless at that point, right? So again, but see how we work together? We put our gifts and our strengths together and help each other. It's not the battle of the sexes. Okay, now, this was a big part. These are the actual sketches by Father Thomas Loya, a Byzantine priest out of Chicago, that was a big part of my Theology of the Body conversion. Now, the guy on the left looks a little hulkish, right? That guy's on steroids. Most men don't look like that. That needs to be toned down. But the one on the right is kind of normal looking, right? Kind of average, normal looking. So he's an artist as well, and he started sketching the angular lines. He said, what am I drawing? And wound up with a male torso. And he said, the design of something tells you what it's made for, what it does best. Oh my gosh. Then he started drawing circles. He said, now what am I drawing? Something rounder, softer, curvier. It's a female body. The design of something tells you what it's made for, what it does best. It's like, oh my gosh, like so pathetically simple, and yet I was blocking that out as a radical feminist. And the thing was, I said, but I believe in science, I believe in biology, I love creation, but not when it comes to human beings, right? So we seem to have all these very, very different ideas about human beings sometimes as part of creation. So men image God's transcendence, all right, by the design of their bodies. Men's sexuality also is external to their bodies. And that means something because the body has meaning, right? So what is transcendence? It's going out of ourselves to work on the world to make it a better place. Women, and this is what we don't hear, because it's kind of a no-brainer. If God is revealed himself as the masculine principle, Father, Son, we say he for God. We also say he for the devil. Do you ever notice that? Men don't complain about that. How come you say he for the devil? Okay. God went out of himself in love and created, right? That's transcendence. So Father Loya says if you want to understand men, externality, externality, externality. Men learn how to become men externally. They have to hit benchmarks in their lives to feel good enough, to feel like they can do it, they're a man, etc. Women, which we never hear about, image God's immanence, bringing the world to ourselves to make it a better place. That kind of nurturance, right? And our bodies are designed for that. But that also reflects our souls, because our souls are being expressed through our bodies. And I don't want to get into that idea of like the ghost in the machine. That's not what I mean. But if we didn't have female souls, we wouldn't know what to do with our female bodies, right? We wouldn't know how to act, right? Same for men. So isn't that beautiful? Catechism of the Catholic Church 239. Check it. 239 talks about this, and 2779. Okay. So can women image God? Absolutely. Yes. So God loves us with the love of a father and with the love of a mother. That's why we need the love of a dad and the love of a mom, because they don't love us the same way. It's different. It's different. They do experiments, not experiments, but like they study children. So little tiny children, when dad comes into the room, get all excited. It's like excitement, adventure, dad's here, right? Even little babies that, you know, it's not like because dad always throws me up in the air or dad takes me out in the backyard and throws me. They just know. It's pheromones too, right? Between human beings. When mom's around, baby calms down. Oh, mom's here. Warm fuzzies, right? Okay. So nature or nurture? Is it nature or nurture?
Yes,
Both, yes, it's both. Yeah. So, but it's very firmly rooted in biology. Why? Because newborns don't lie. Newborns do not have a chance to have been socially conditioned, right? Unless somebody had a bullhorn and told the baby girl in the womb, you are going to love pink when you come out. And you're going to think you're a Disney princess. Okay? No. Immediately, babies begin interacting with the world in a completely different way. So little girls, they want to see human faces. And they'll look at the human face much longer than a little boy will. What does he want to see? Stuff. He wants to see that mobile, right? The airplanes, he will watch that thing forever. Why? Because he's not friendly? No. Because he's learning to interact with the world in a different way. Little girls, if the adult talks to them, is going to look at that face much longer. The little boy doesn't care if the adult talks. He's going to look away, look for stuff, look for things. Men's eyes have more of, I believe, I get these mixed up at the P cell or the C cell. It's vice versa. Men's eyes track moving objects at a distance much better than women's. Women have cells that track peripheral things very close to them. Makes sense, right? Men were the hunters. Women were the gatherers, farmer-gatherers, and looking out for those little kids before they fall into the fire, right? And the pets, the animals, the farm animals at home, right? Okay, a few more things about newborns. When they get a little older, little girls at 4 months can recognize in photographs faces of people they know. Little boys can't yet. It's not good. Boys are not slower. It's just they're learning. They don't use as much language. Sometimes little boys don't speak right away, right? Little girls, ooh, they start talking pretty fast, most of them. Women use 13,000 more words a day than men. Shaka, right? So, when they get a little older, in like a pre-K classroom, if a new child is brought into the room, who goes running over right away? The girls or boys? The girls, in general. We're talking in generalities. When new toys come into the room, who goes running over? Little boys. Because men civilize the world, and women civilize people. Men civilize the world to make it habitable for all of us, right? Do a great service. Women civilize the people who are going to live in that world. Okay, so all men of all cultures throw their babies up in the air. They just do it. Nobody tells them to do it. They just do it. And it's really good for the baby. Why? 2 reasons in particular why it's good for the baby. Learn trust. My dad's going to catch me. I can trust my dad. What else? Yeah, I'm flying. Whee! I can do it on my own, right? So mom is that nurturing love. They know mom. They've been inside her for 9 months. Who's this guy? Right? Dad represents the big, scary outside world. But dad's going to help me navigate it, right? Both types of love, that nurturing love, like usually if a kid falls down, who's the one, again, generalities, who's the one who says, come on, get up, you're going to be fine, you can do it, you can get back on the bike? Usually dad, right? Because he's teaching you how to be an individual, how to get out there and face the world. Who's the one, oh, come here, I'm going to kiss the boo-boo, put the Band-Aid on, you're huggy, you're going to be better. That's usually mom, right? But we need both of those types of love. We don't just need the tough love. At least, somebody acknowledged my pain, right? But that also gives the child a secure inner core when mom does that. But we don't want to just give kids wings, and we don't want to just give them roots, right? We need both. Mom has to learn to let go, right? Dad has to learn that it's not all tough love, right? Okay. But babies learn language from mom. Did you know that? Because a baby can only see 9 inches in front of them, and they're starting to learn so much about the world. There's so much information going into that little head that they're just, so it can only see about 9 inches away, meant to be mom, when breastfeeding usually, right? And listening to the language. So mom's got to be talking to that baby. Now, women in general go, I don't know why we do that, but we do. Not all women, again. We do it to little pets, right? Right? For some reason, the baby learns language better that way. Not just catches the attention, but the baby likes those high-pitched sounds. Now, not all women will talk like that to their children. My child will not say baba. My child will learn bottle. My child will learn the proper names for everything. Fine, just talk to the kid, okay? It doesn't matter. Just talk to the kid. So today we have moms on their phones. They're not looking at baby, right? They're not interacting with baby. This is very bad. There's only a certain window of time we're learning that kids can really get language. Not just learn a bunch of words, but learn language and all of that. Okay. So I'm going to just jump over. I do a whole day on masculinity and femininity. It's my favorite part of Theology of the Body. It's so much fun. And isn't that, the spice of life in a sense, So how many sitcoms? Everybody loves Raymond. It's all about the male-female differences, right? Stuff like that. Okay. John Paul II talked about the feminine genius. That is the feminine genius right there. How God made women. And this is the masculine genius. How God made men. All right? Now, lion's share of sexuality. Why do we have, because we have monthly cycles, right? Getting ready for pregnancy, etc. Now, can this cause fluctuating emotions? Fluctuating hormones cause fluctuating emotions? Yes, it can. So ladies, it's not your fault, okay? But did you know that women are emotionally stronger than men? What? Yeah, we're resilient because we're used to fluctuations and we get it out. We're crying all the time. We get our emotions out, right? And part of it's cultural conditioning where men are told, to hold it in. And that's not so great, right? And then so when something bad happens, men just fall apart, right? But see, this causes men to be a rock, right? Don't we love that about men, ladies? Steady, dependable, good men, I mean, right? So like faithful, steady, dependable, you can count on them. It's easy for them, ladies, see? Now actually, men's hormones do rise and fall slightly during the day, but as a general rule, through the month, no. And they only have those 2 strands. Okay. So this is beautiful. This is like this crazy idea, like that men are simple. Women say, I can understand men, they're so simple. No. There's a lot more to us than hormones. My dad was a Renaissance man. He was incredibly complex. I don't think any of us understood him. Really, he was, wow. He did a lot of things in his life and he had a lot of interests and he was a thinker and he was, wow. So men are not simple. Okay. There's a Christian comedian, he plays the piano and tells jokes. And he says, my wife and I play a little game every morning. It's called Guess What Mood I'm In. Guess what mood she's in. He says, I have never won that game. So I tell men, okay, you just have to deal with us when we're feeling like this. How would you like to feel like that? Yeah. Right? Okay. So I was taught, as a young woman growing up, that feminine ways of doing things were inferior. I was taught this by the media, by radical feminists, and sadly by men. They're inferior, they're silly, they're foolish, they're weak, they're fickle, they're overly sentimental, they're emotional as though emotions are bad, and they're just inferior. So I trained myself early on, I can think like a man, I can approach things like a man, I can be like a man, I can be as good as a man, right? And I just pressed all my feminine feelings, emotions, ways of thinking, ways of doing things, ways of problem solving, and took on something that was a little foreign to me. But then John Paul II told me it's good to be like this. You're not made defective. This is good. It is good to be a woman. A woman? Can I get an a woman? Okay. Right? John Paul II gave me permission to be a woman. So I'm so grateful to him. And so then the guy started saying, well, how come John Paul II never talked about the masculine genius? Which he kind of didn't. He has that beautiful Guardian of the Redeemer on St. Joseph. And he talks about men in Love and Responsibility and TOB. But he addressed women a lot directly. Why? Why did he address women and not men?
He had a lot to offset.
He had a lot to offset. He was answering the women's movement. He was dialoguing with the feminist women's movement, right? Now we have meninist movements, right? And a lot of men's movements now that we didn't at the time.
For a long time, men know how to be men. They were not going confused. Women were the ones that were confused.
Yes. Well, there's a lot I could say.
Some women are confused.
Yes, kind of, sort of. That's a whole nother kind of topic there. So, yeah. So, but there are women working on the masculine genius now. Isn't that incredible? So it took a man to tell us who we were, in a sense, to appreciate us, right? To stand back at a distance and say, this is who you are, ladies. And it's beautiful and wonderful. And you should be who you are. And there's a lot of women now. Dr. Deborah Savage in Minnesota, St. Paul, Minnesota, St. Thomas College there is doing it. I'm doing some stuff. Yeah. So to reflect back to each other, right? Okay. All right, moving right along. Just to cover some things here. Oh. I never gave you your handouts. Wow, can I have some help up here, please? Oh, wow, okay. So this is one thing you want to pass out. That's a little red card for everyone.
You want me to hold that so you have two?
No.
hands? Okay.
Thank you, if you can just stay there for a second. So this is a magazine just for gals, just for guys. It is, it goes into public school, so it's not religious, but it's made by Catholics. It's kind of like it has advice columns, etc. It's really cool. I object to the super cheesy covers they put on this particular one, but we're working on that. I told them they're horrible, but anyway, so that's one. If you need more of those, the address is on the inside where to get that. Thank you. Then I have some science stats. So these are just 5 random topics I chose. Thank you. And then put what science is saying about it, what the church is saying about it, and of course those two are in agreement, and then what the sexual revolution is saying about it, which is off the charts, right? Off in left field, being unscientific, doing its own thing. Then I have a green handout for you, if someone can help me with this one. Thank you. And this is just a summation. I'll get rid of that top one. Just garbage. Thank you, Sister Claire. This is Sister Claire, by the way. I'm so sorry, so rude. Didn't introduce her. She's from upstate New York, near where Kateri was born and baptized. Yeah, right around that area. So, and then if one more person could help me, I have one more handout that bears, thank you, that bears some explanation. This yellow one here is John Paul II's guidance on the body in art and media. It's section 60 to 63 in his TOB text, and it's just incredible. He covers all the bases, and it's phenomenal. So you will get all of these digitally, and they're not copyrighted. You can make copies, hand them out, pass them out. So if you look at your little red card in your hands, which is the 7 stages to true love, we're going to do some TOB in a very condensed manner, just so you can get an idea of how helpful and how deep this really goes. But we don't have time to unpack it, which would actually take a very long time. So the 7 stages to true love are thus and so. This is from Love and Responsibility. So first we start with attraction, and this might be a very deep physical or sexual attraction. That's okay. God put that in us. I hope we're attracted to each other. Then desire turns into desire, which is deeper. And then we have sympathy for the person. What is the difference between sympathy and empathy? Actually, I thought it was that too, but empathy is just being able to imagine how somebody feels. Sympathy is I feel with you. I feel it with you. So I don't just know what makes this person happy and sad. I feel their happiness, I feel their sadness with them.
That's sympathy?
That's sympathy, yeah. I know, I thought it was the other way around too, but it's not. That's why JP2 uses the word sympathy. And then friendship. So it can't just stay at that physical or sexual attraction level. It has to develop into a friendship. Now sometimes friendship comes first, right? We're friends with somebody and then we realize we're falling in love with them. Happens all the time. But we have to make a decision whether or not we're going to tell them how we're feeling, because we might ruin the friendship, right? It's the dating project. You know the dating project? So that's there's a professor at Boston College, Kerry Cronin, who does you have to pay for it and get credits. How to date. It's a dating course, because she realized these young people, none of them had been on a date. They either hang out or hook up, and that's it. So she started this dating course, and part of it is that they have to go on dates. She's teaching them how to date. Okay, and she says it's a very advanced move to move from the friendship thing to I would like to explore, a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, because your friend may not feel the same way about you, and you don't. Anyway, she tells them how to do it. Okay, then number 5 is what love truly is, right? Willing the good of the other, no matter what it costs me. That's Thomas Aquinas. Love is to will the good of the other as other, not as some extension of myself, whom I'm going to control and has to do my will, as the other, no matter what it costs me. But the beautiful thing about number 5 is that it works in my favor too. If I'm doing what's good for you, it's automatically good for me. If I do what's good for me, it's going to also be good for you. Even if we don't feel that way, or, it doesn't feel good at the moment. It's not like, well, I'll do what's good for the other person. Too bad it's bad for me. It's like, no, it's going to be good for both of you, because we're all living in this together. And then we've arrived, if we can pass that acid test of a kind of impartial love where I am willing to do, even if it means we can't be together, like I'm willing to do that, and then true love. We've arrived at true love, which may or may not become marriage. Now, if you just take a look at 1 through 6 and remove the romantic element, that's a good way to love anybody, right? A parent to a child. I'm attracted. I love my child. I desire to be with my child. I have sympathy and friendship, and I want their good. Married love is a very special kind of love. Not all love is marriage. Okay? So what is marriage based on ultimately? Don't give me a spiritual answer. Commitment. I said not commitment. No, sorry. I'm sorry.
Having children.
Okay, yeah. That's a spiritual answer. Trust. We're getting there. We're getting there. Yeah, okay. So marriage is based on the otherness of body persons. Marriage is based on the otherness of body-persons. They can't be the same. They have to be different, right? So men and men do not have sex. They can't have sexual intercourse, a man and a man. Not possible. A woman and a woman do not have sex. They do not have sexual intercourse. They can have sexual activity. They can have genital activity. They can have a bodily trying to express love and affection, but it's not sex. Only a man and a woman can have sex. But we don't call it sex in Theology of the Body, we call it the marital embrace. Isn't that beautiful? The marital embrace. Because it's not just the embrace of the body, it's the embrace of the whole person. Oh, Susie and Johnny are doing the marital embrace. Oh, are they married? Okay. What is the difference between lust and desire? You're reading the screen. No.
Lust be selfish and desire is of the other.
Yeah, beautifully put. Okay, so lust is using the other person. Okay, so the opposite of love is use. It's not hate. It's to use another person as a thing. It's to use my own body as a thing, as a plaything. That's what we'll use. There's lots of ways to use people. Slave labor, right? That's using somebody. I use you to social climb and then I dump you. I use you to get to somebody or get something I want and then I dump you. To sexually use somebody is called lust. I use you for my sexual gratification. Can we agree to mutually use each other? Sure, that's what hooking up is. And if we put pleasure at the top of our list, that can easily become use, right, of what we're doing here. So there's no give and take in love. It's give and receive, right? So the male, remember the masculine principle? The male is the initiator of love and life. It's very obvious to see that, the body, right? And that's what happens in the marital embrace. It's different. The experience of the marital embrace for men and women is completely different. Completely different. Okay? The woman receives the gift of love and life and returns it. It's an exchange. It's not that the man is active and the woman's passive. The man gives in a receiving way and the woman receives in a giving way. And that's why we call all of creation feminine, because it can only receive from God. Right? So the feminine principle receives from God. Mother Earth, Mother Nature. Those aren't just poetical terms. This is factual, right? So did any of us create ourselves? No. So we all receive from God. Okay, So receptivity is natural to women. Our bodies are receptive. They're receptive to nature. Our cycles go by the moon. Women cycle together when they live together, right? Our bodies are receptive to men, to babies, to new life. John Paul II calls them new persons because he's a philosopher. Not babies, new persons. Okay. So what about men? How can men be receptive to God if receptivity doesn't come naturally to men? They're the doers, right? Get her done. They're initiating the gift of life and love. They want to fix the problem. That's why we drive them crazy, ladies, when we talk. Because we just talk. And we're solving our problem as we talk. We don't want you to fix our problem. Just listen. And they're like, can you just state your problem so I can fix it? Like, so no, just listen. We'll fix it. We'll fix our own problems. Okay, just listen. Okay. So how do men experience receptivity? What slide was that? What number?
788.
Thank you. 788, because we're going to come back to that. Let me see if I can find my other slide. Okay, just keep that. Okay, just keep this slide. Thank you. Keep that slide in mind, all right? The one of the masculine principle, remember the big gold sun that looks like a sun? Okay. So I've asked men through the years, how do you be receptive to God? Like, how do you pray if receptivity doesn't come naturally to you? I've gotten different answers, and I knew I hadn't really heard the right answer yet. So this is what I do. I ask my TOB priest friends first. Then I ask my TOB guy friends. Then I ask my priest friends, and I ask my guy friends. That's my tier system. Okay? So about 2 years ago, I finally got the answer. I was at the Theology of the Body Institute, and a young priest from Vermont, Father John, I forget his last name, Jon, he said something that, like, you know how sometimes, like, you have these God moments where everything goes in slow motion, you know, and you're like, and it goes like vignette on Instagram. You're like, God's like, look, watch, listen, learn, right? You know those moments in life where it's like, you know this is important. So Father John talks real slowly, so I'm going to talk real slowly. He said, because we talk a lot about this bridal imagery that we ladies can plug right into. Yeah, we'll be like, yeah, we get that. Cool, I'm a bride. I get it. And the guys are like, no. Even though the whole church is the bride of Christ, right? So Father John said, bridal imagery does not resound in the heart of a man. For him, it's more filial, sonship. What a woman feels from the bridegroom, a man feels from the Father. He must hear, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." And then the Son, the man, can go out and take on the world like the Son did and give the bride what she needs. So for men, it's more identification with Jesus in his humanity, his male humanity, and the sonship with the Father. And if men don't get that from their own fathers, they're going to be looking for that their whole lives. They're going to be trying to prove themselves as men and prove their worthiness. And I don't know why men do this, why guys do this to each other, but they withhold that approval. Every man has to hear from his father, "Good job, son. I'm so proud of you." And for some reason, I don't know if it's passed on generationally or whatever, men withhold that from each other. I know men in their 70s that are still looking for their father's approval, and their father's dead. You know, so guys, you have to say that to your sons. Even if he stinks at hockey. It's like A for effort, you know? Like, "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." And there's a lot more we could say about that, but we don't have time. So did that make sense, guys? So men, and Sister Sarah Butler, if you know who she is, she really agrees with that the idea of men looking at Jesus, looking at the Father, and there's more identification there, right? When I look at a crucifix, why would there be a crucifix here? I'm often talking, what? Oh, thank you. So when a man looks at a crucifix, he sees his own body there. I look at and I see a human. It's not my body, right? So this tells a man a lot about how he's called to love, right? But when I look at a crucifix, I see my counterpart. This is my counterpart, my male counterpart, laying down his life for me. How do I respond to that love? The holiness of the bride is measured by her response to that kind of love. Will we say yes? Right? So again, there's a lot more to that, but we're moving on. And number 7 is the only place for sex, just like the media tells us, right? Just like the media and the culture tell us. Why is it the only place for love? Well, we're going to see in a minute. So these are God's 5 F's of true love and true sex. And Christopher West and a lot of TOBers only use 4, and they call full total. I like alliteration, so I have 5 F's. And I start with fundamental because people don't understand, first of all, that sex has to be male to female, female to male, and also treating each other as persons, not things. Can we treat each other as things even in marriage? Yeah. Can there be lust even in marriage? Yeah. Yeah. It really has no place in marriage, but it can be there, and we have to keep rooting it out, right, when it shows up. So this is what the language of the body is saying. So John Paul II says if we're not saying all 5 things, we can lie with the language of the body. So sex is saying you alone forever. That's what sex is saying. So if we're hooking up, am I saying, do I mean you alone forever? No. So I'm lying with the language of the body in a hookup because my body is saying you alone forever. And we could get into all the biology, but your body assumes this is your partner for life and prepares your bodies that way. It is expecting you to stay with that person forever. There is a movie called Vanilla Sky, and Cameron Diaz says something to Tom Cruise that is so theology of the body. It's like the most theology of the body line in a movie ever. She says, don't you know that when you sleep with someone, your body makes a promise whether you do or not? And then she says, do you believe in God? That it has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. And they don't finish the thought. But it's like, and I have my suspicions as to why the screenwriter Cameron Crowe, he was a journalist for Rolling Stone magazine when he was 15 years old. They didn't know how old he was. He also wrote the movie Almost Famous with Kate Hudson. But he's married to Anne Hart of the best female rock duo ever, Hart. Remember? Barracuda? You know, they're sisters, Anne and Nancy Wilson. Sorry, he's married to Nancy. And they've been married forever, right? And I think by living the theology of the body, he came to that understanding. He could say that in this movie, right? Your body is speaking a language because he's living that, right? Okay. So why is it these 5? Does it have to be these 5? Why couldn't it be God's 9 cues of true love? Why is it these 5? This is a very hard question. Why is this what sexual love demands of us? Every human being is worth this kind of love. We shouldn't settle. Anyone know why it's these 5? Yes.
We're called to love as God loves.
Exactly. This is how God loves us. Fundamentally, freely, fully, faithfully, and fruitfully. People say, how does he love us fruitfully? He made you. He created you. He was fruitful in making you, and he made you fruitful. Like in imitation of God. Okay, so gender. The word gender is related to genitals. Did you know that? And there's only 2 ways to give life. As a mother or as a father. If we cut fruitfulness out of the equation, and it's just about pleasure, it's just about companionship and affection, well, you can have as many genders as you want, because we're not talking about life, right? So Christopher West goes through all the words that come from gender, or similar: genealogy, progeny, generation, even genius, all comes from that. So we are called to love as God loves. Are we capable of loving as God loves? Yes, with the grace of God, right? We can't do it alone. And God enables us to love as he loves. So a lot of people think, oh, I thought love was more magical than that. There's more sparkles. There's plenty of sparkles in love. It's just that there's more of us in it than we thought. We create true love. There's no the one. I'm looking for the one. How are you ever going to know it's the one unless they had an arrow over their head when you met them? So you get married to whom you think is the one. That one person out there that I have to find, or I won't fulfill my life. They're in Kazakhstan right now, and I have to somehow magically meet them and encounter them, and if I don't, I'm going to marry the wrong person, I'm going to be miserably unhappy. So we meet somebody, we think they're the one, we get married, things aren't going so good, and that person at work starts looking real good. Maybe they were the one I was supposed to marry, right? It's like, no. We choose someone and we treat them like the one, and they treat us like the one. There's a lot of people we could marry and would be compatible with, we'd have a good marriage. It would be different with each of those people because we're all different. But there's a lot more of us in love than we think. Okay, now we want to cover a few more things. Oh yes. Let's just move on to the 4 purposes of sex. So what are the purposes of sex? There's 2 that are pretty evident. What are they? Procreation and unity. Now, pleasure is a sideshow. Yeah, so it's important, but it's a sideshow. Okay. Union and procreation. God is love and God is life. So those are the simpler terms for union and procreation. Love and life. God's love is his life is his love. You can't separate them. What if God got up one day and said, well, today I'm going to love you, but I'm not going to give you life? What would happen? Poof, cease to exist. What if he said, well, I'm going to give you life today, but I'm not going to love you? Poof, we would cease to exist. God is love, God is life. And we're made in the image of God. So, but there are 2 other purposes of sex. There's actually more than that. But these other 2 also make us in the image of God and tie our sexuality directly into God. Remember, what is the image of God? What makes us in the image of God? Male and female, the sexual difference. That's what makes us most like God. Did God say, what was the first command God gave us? Go forward and think? Go forward and gain knowledge. Go have sex. Be fruitful, be fertile, and multiply. So, very earthy, right? Human life, very earthy. We don't all have to be thinkers and philosophers and whatever, but we have to live it. Okay. So the other 2 purposes of sex, anybody know what they are? Very linked to God, directly linked into God, as are these. Very linked to heaven. Theology of the body is heaven-centered, heaven-directed. Not just muddling around in the middle. Like when I was in CCD, they said, be a good person here and now, the end. And I'm like, why should I? Really? Just be a good person? Anybody can do that. I don't need the church for that. Or so I thought. Anyone? Okay. All right. A taste of heaven. It's meant to be a taste of heaven, a foretaste of heaven, and a way to get to heaven. Sex is a way to get to heaven. Yeah, it's part of the sacrament. It's a sacrament. It's holy, okay? It's sacred. If you want to treat it as something else, that's on you. That's on you. But it is sacred and it is holy. Okay? Now, we're going to, there's again so much we could say here, but we're not going to. We're going to move on. What makes something sacred? 3 things. Comes from God, reveals God, and leads us back to God. So I had this old guy, the old guys are the best that come to my TOB classes. They tell me all this stuff, like how they've experienced love and marriage. Fascinating. Inside intel. So this old guy, Earl, I said, his wife was sitting next to him. He loved theology of the body. Really old. I said, Earl, does your wife come from God? Yes. Does she reveal God to you? Yes. Is she leading you to God? Yes. So your wife is sacred? She's lovable. He wouldn't say she's sacred. He thought he was making her into a goddess or something. So we used to tease him, Earl, is your wife sacred? Okay. All right. Now, okay, we're going to wrap up with this. Sex comes from the heart of God. But we have done something to sex in our culture. Sex comes from right here, the heart of God. But we have put it over here. Okay? We've taken sex out of the heart of God, and now we no longer know what it is. We know it's something really good, but we kick it around like a football because we don't know what it is. And we look back at God, there's a gaping hole in God, so we're like, well, we don't need God. All I know is this. This is what I love, this is what I can experience, this is what I know. But don't just blame, like, secular people for doing that, because even religious people have done that. What do I mean? Well, it's like sex is too good for God. That's what, like, a secular person might say. And religious people say God is too good for sex. Sex doesn't really have much to do with God. How dare you talk about it in theological context? So another thing theology of the body is accused of is sexualizing God, being like obsessed with sex and sexualizing God. No, we are Godizing sex as it should be. All right. So either way, sex has nothing to do with God, and if it has nothing to do with God, what is it? What the heck is it? We're still on the wrong slides. Okay. Don't really want Hitler right now. Okay. So, Satan hates you. If you didn't know that, sorry to break the news. He doesn't really hate you. It's not really about you, about us. It's about God. He hates God. Can Satan get at God directly? Can he get at the image of God? Oh yeah. And that's why he attacks where we're most in the image of God. Sexuality, right? Satan hates babies. He hates new life. He hates male and female. He hates the sexual difference. He hates the family. You would think he thinks the body is his domain, right? But he's not a body person. So how could it be his domain? Okay. So the holiest place on earth is, see all the good stuff you're missing?
I'm going to try to explain these slides to somebody that couldn't be here.
So this is the holiest place on earth. What do we call it?
Tabernacle.
Why is it the holiest place on earth?
Jesus is in there.
Because God himself resides there. Body, blood, soul, and divinity. Only the priest consecrates the Eucharist that is placed there. So the priest, like Christ, lays down his life for the church. Priestly celibacy, that's for us. Because we're the bride, right? So every time we think about priestly celibacy, it's so that the priest is laying down his life for us. He does it. I had a seminarian tell me, Sister, celibacy is really easy because I get up in the morning for others. That's why I'm leaving celibacy. The second holiest place on earth is this, a woman's body. Why? She can hold another image of God in her body. So the only man that should approach her is the man who's going to treat her like Christ treats the church, laying down his life for her, or like a priest treats the tabernacle where he places the Eucharist. Isn't that beautiful? That's our story of sex. That's how beautiful and holy sex is. So we need to not be ashamed and to get out there and tell this incredibly beautiful story of sex that's good for men, good for women. The first time I talked about this was at a teen group in Illinois, and when I went to say this, I felt a hand on my throat choking me. I'm not kidding you, and I don't usually feel those things. But I felt a hand on my throat choking me so I couldn't say it. But I got it out, and the kids couldn't tell I was choking to death. But I went back the next year, and those were the forced march kids, those were the confirmation kids. But I went back next year for the youth group kids. Those are the kids who want to be there. All of them want to be there. And I said, how many were here for TOB? Yeah, 3 kids raised their hand. And I said, as a joke, I said, you remember everything I said, right? This kid raised his hand, and he repeated this whole thing back to me. He's about 15 years old. And he said, it took guts to say that. And I looked at him, I was like, you mind reader? Like, what? And it was just a sign from God, like, say it. This is important, right? Say this. So what do we need to do? What's the next step? We need to educate ourselves, because this isn't just a bunch of head knowledge, right? Like we said, it's not a head trip. This is life. This is like some of the most important stuff we could ever learn for life. And our young people are so hungry for information about the body, aren't they? And as Christopher West says, if we don't spread the banquet for them, they're going to go to the dumpster. They're going to eat garbage because we can't just live with no knowledge of the body. So education, courageous action, to talk, to share, and to become some kind of a theology of the body activist, as you feel called. I call myself a theology of the body activist. Love our culture, love our society, love all the people confused, love all the parents struggling with kids who come home and say, Mom, I'm not your daughter, I'm your son, right? Pray for these kids, for everybody. And again, sometimes we don't think people want the truth, but they do. They really do. I could tell you story after story of young people who even came to the church because of our uncompromising stand on a lot of things, the truth. So the Theology of the Body Institute in Pennsylvania is where you can get certified. I also have an online course, only run at certain times of the year through sacredheartcollege.ca in Peterborough, Ontario. And I call it Theology of the Body Basics. So you're just going to get familiar with concepts, language, terminology. Not a replacement for the Theology of the Body Institute, which is 8 solid weeks of stuff. But it's a help. It's a good launch pad. And I take up things that the Institute doesn't. Like I lay a lot of the philosophical groundwork, etc. So thank you so much. God bless you, and let's continue to pray for each other.